I'm Yuntian. I used to be a mercenary, but 3 days ago, I woke up in the body of a 15-year-old boy with the same name. This is a parallel world, year 1966, and I'm living in the Xing'an Mountains in northern China, near the Soviet border. The original boy's parents died in the Korean War when he was a baby. His grandfather raised him, and they were very close. When the old man passed away 3 days ago, the boy couldn't handle the grief and died too. That's when I took over his body. Today I went into the mountains early to hunt. I wanted to catch some game to thank the villagers who helped bury grandfather. I carried his old Soviet mercenary rifle on my back, one of the few things he left me, along with 43 bullets, but I mainly used a slingshot made from a bicycle inner tube. First I spotted a squirrel up in a pine tree. I hit it in the leg with a stone and knocked it right down. It weighed less than a pound, and the fur could sell for about 1 yuan. Then I made it disappear into my hand, straight into a special space I discovered after I arrived in this body. It's thousands of miles wide inside, with land, mountains, rivers, and ponds. Time flows 10 times faster in there. Seeds I planted 3 days ago are already tall. Next I chased a wild rabbit into its burrow on a small hill. I found 7 or 8 tunnel openings. I blocked most of them with rocks, left only the upwind and downwind exits open. I lit dry grass and tossed in some dried chili peppers to make choking smoke, then covered my face with a wet towel and opened my space entrance right at the downwind hole. The rabbits came running out one after another, straight into my space. I caught 37 in total. The biggest was a buck weighing 6 or 7 pounds. The smallest were just fist-sized babies. After that big haul, I decided to head home. I lifted my wrist to check the time out of habit, then remembered, it's the 1960s, I don't have a watch. About half an hour later, a terrible stench hit me from upwind. I almost cursed about someone relieving themselves in the woods, but then I realized, I'm deep in the mountains. That smell meant I'd just run into something big. I climbed a tall tree to get a better view and spotted a group of wild boars about 500 or 600 meters away. I climbed down and moved closer, staying downwind so they wouldn't smell me. I found a thick tree about 50 or 60 meters from them and climbed up. The trunk was wide enough that even an angry boar couldn't knock it down. I tied myself to the tree with a rope from my space so I wouldn't fall. Then I studied the group. 1 big male boar around 400 gene, 3 sows about 300 gene each, for young pigs around 100 gene, and a bunch of piglets. I loaded my Mosin Nagant and aimed at the big male first. I waited 5 minutes until his head lined up in my sights, then pulled the trigger without hesitation. I didn't stop to check. I just kept working the bolt. 4 more shots rang out, quick and sharp. I reloaded with a fresh stripper clip from my space, untied the rope, and climbed down carefully. When I reached the boar nest, the big male was dead, a clean headshot. 2 of the 3 sows were also dead. The third was gutshot and barely breathing. 1 young pig had a leg wound and couldn't run. The other 3 pigs had escaped. I pulled all the dead and wounded ones into my space, along with the piglets. They were big enough to not need milk, maybe 10 plus gene each. My first hunt after arriving in this world was a huge success. I estimated around 1,300 gene total. After removing the guts and organs, I'd have 700 or 800 gene of pure meat. Using my mind, I butchered the big male inside the space. I took out his innards and hung them on a tree branch outside. That's the hunter's custom here, an offering to the mountain god. Scientifically, I figured it was probably meant to distract predators while the hunter got away safely. But after experiencing something as impossible as transmigration, I wasn't so quick to dismiss old beliefs anymore. Maybe there really is a mountain god. I washed the blood off my hands with water from the space, checked myself carefully for any traces, then collected my spent bullet casings from the ground. A hunter should leave nothing behind that doesn't belong to the mountain. I headed back to the village. When I got home and saw grandfather's 3 mud brick rooms, I felt a wave of sadness. The house was still here, but the old man was gone. I said quietly in my heart, "Don't worry. I'll live a good life for you." After that, my mind felt strangely clear. I went inside, my first real home in this world. By the sun's position, the work brigade hadn't finished yet, so I changed clothes and lay down on the Kong to rest. I dozed off until a gong woke me, the signal that the morning shift was over. I got up, found a burlap sack, and used my mind to pull 15 rabbits out of the space, each one 3 or 4 gene heavy. I decided to give the rabbits to everyone who helped with grandfather's funeral. The people who organized things, carried the coffin, and dug the grave. Since it was just me and grandfather in our family, the villagers really put in a lot of effort. Helping out meant losing a day's work points, so I had to repay that kindness. First, I went to the Qin family. Old Qin Diyun, a short but sturdy man in his 50s, had led the whole funeral. His two sons, Qin Yong and Qin Meng, helped carry the coffin. I called out from the gate. I was in mourning, so I couldn't just walk into someone's house. His little grandchildren, Qin Lei and Qin Yu, ran inside to get him. Old Qin came out and told me not to be so formal. I pulled 3 rabbits from the sack, one for him, one for each son. He tried to refuse, saying one was enough, but I insisted. Every person who helped was getting one. I waved goodbye and moved on. Behind me, I heard old Qin tell his son to kill 1 rabbit for lunch and save the other 2 for the autumn harvest. The kids started jumping around shouting, "We're eating meat." I went house by house, following the names in the original boy's memory, until I had 1 rabbit left. I brought it to the last house at the south end of the village. It belonged to a man called Zhuji. His real name was Pang Yinju, about 26 or 27. He was the hardest worker in the production team, earning 10 or even 12 work points a day. He lived alone with his young nephew. Zhuji should have been living well with those work points, but life had been cruel to him. About 5 years ago, he and his older brother borrowed an ox from the production team to haul timber, hoping to earn money for Zhuji's wedding. The logs came loose going downhill. His brother was killed instantly, and the ox was so badly injured it had to be slaughtered. His brother's wife went back to her parents and remarried, leaving behind a small son. Zhuji swore to raise the boy. On top of his grief, he owed the production team over 300 yuan for the dead ox. It took him 5 years to pay it off, and by then the girl he'd planned to marry was long gone. I gave him the last rabbit despite his protests, then hurried home with the empty sack. The whole errand had taken so long, it was almost time for the afternoon work shift. By then, some families had already cooked their rabbits. The smell of meat drew neighbors' attention. Nobody cooks meat on a regular day. Word spread through the whole production team that I'd been giving away rabbits. Some people understood I was thanking the funeral helpers and praised me for doing the right thing. Others just wished they'd helped too. But a few lazy troublemakers decided I was looking down on them by not giving them anything. They planned to confront me after the evening shift. 3 local hooligans couldn't even wait that long. They were already heading toward my house. I knew nothing about any of this. I was inside my space, stewing pork ribs for a late lunch. The ribs I was stewing came from the young wild pig, the best tasting one. The big male boar would have tasted terrible since it was uncastrated. I fried the ribs in pork fat with just green onion, ginger, and garlic, and stuck corn and wheat flatbreads around the edge of the pot. I was happily eating when someone started banging on my gate nonstop. I cursed under my breath, left the space, and opened the house door. 3 guys were standing outside my yard wall. From the original boy's memory, I recognized them as the village hooligans, guys who never did any real work and just wandered around causing trouble. The one in front, a pimple-faced young man with a side-parted haircut, shouted at me to open up. He demanded to know why I gave rabbits to other people, but not to them. His name was Zhang Wei, nephew of the brigade accountant Zhang Li. The Zhang family was big in the village, over 100 people, 40-some young men, which made them feel untouchable. Zhang Li only got his accountant position partly because he finished middle school, but mostly because of the family's numbers behind him. I'd actually expected village officials to come question me about hunting, since in this era everything belongs to the collective, including wild animals. That's exactly why I chose to give away rabbits instead of wild boar meat. Small game in a remote mountain village, people look the other way. But I'd underestimated how desperate people were for meat in the 1960s. Since these 3 clearly came looking for trouble, I wasn't going to be polite. I smirked and called Zhang Wei third little dog, a play on his family's old nicknames. His grandfather had been called Big Dog, his father second dog, and the accountant third dog. The nickname still followed the accountant around behind his back. Zhang Wei exploded with rage and kicked my gate hard. The wood shook, but held. I unlatched the door and opened it. He puffed up his chest, thinking I was backing down since they had 3 guys. Instead, I front-kicked him square in the chest. He stumbled back 6 or 7 steps and dropped on his backside, mouth opening and closing, but no words coming out. I'd knocked the wind right out of him. His 2 followers were stunned. One of them, Zhang Feng, a distant relative of the accountant, stammered that they just wanted to ask me for a few rabbits. He was smart enough not to admit their real plan, which was to beat me up and force me to keep catching rabbits for them, so they could eat meat and sell the rest for money. They never expected me to fight. The Zhang family's size made everyone in the village afraid of them, so nobody ever pushed back. But I wasn't the old Yuntian. I told them bluntly, "Am I your father? Why would I give you anything? Pick up that piece of trash on the ground and get lost." Zhang Feng and the other guy, Li Jin, a distant relative of the brigade leader Li Qinglu, dragged Zhang Wei to his feet, and the 3 of them shuffled away from my house. News traveled fast in the village. Soon everyone knew that the 3 hooligans came to demand rabbits from me and got beaten. The villagers who received rabbits took my side and said those 3 deserved it. Some others who'd been planning to come ask for free rabbits saw how I handled things and got angry, not because I was wrong, but because they couldn't take advantage of me now. I didn't care about any of that. I locked the gate and the house door, lay on the Kong, and slipped into my space. 3 days ago when I first arrived, I'd found some books in there. One was called Body Refining Manual, a martial arts training method with both movement forms and breathing techniques. Supposedly, mastering the highest levels would give you the strength to lift massive weights and cut through armies. There was also a matching medical book listing tens of thousands of herbs, and another book called Spirit Refining Manual for training mental power. I started practicing the first level. It was slow going. I had to study each move carefully. By the time I finished the 13th form, I was starving. The energy drain was enormous. I reheated the leftover ribs and flatbread, ate, then kept training. By the time evening came outside, I'd learned all 24 forms of the first level and could perform them roughly. I left the space and guessed it was around 5 or 6 in the afternoon. To keep up appearances, I scooped some cornmeal from the rice jar and made a simple corn porridge on the stove. The fire also warmed the Kong. Just as I sat down to eat, 4 middle-aged women showed up at my gate. From the original boys' memories, I could tell these were the village's worst troublemakers, the type who would argue over nothing. I barely recognized them. The village had several hundred people, and these women had all married in from other villages. A woman with a big mole on her face called herself Aunt Zhao and said she wanted to talk. I cut her off and told them I didn't know who they were and couldn't help them. Go home. Then a sharp-faced, sour-looking woman named Lu Mei stepped forward and accused me of looking down on her family by not giving her a rabbit. I was in a hurry to finish my meal, so I just said flatly, "Yeah, I do look down on you. What are you going to do about it?" She exploded. She started cursing me, called me a family-ending orphan, said I'd cursed my parents to death. The moment those words came out, a memory surfaced. Her son had gotten beaten up by the original Yuntian when they were small, and she'd come to the house cursing with the exact same words. Grandfather had beaten her with a wooden stick so badly she couldn't get out of bed for days. The matter was settled by village leaders since my parents were war martyrs and grandfather himself had fought the Japanese. But now she was back at it again. I went to the kitchen and found a hemp rope with a knot at the end as big as an egg and hard as a rock. When I came out carrying it, the other 3 women immediately backed away. They were greedy and shameless, but they weren't stupid. Lu Mei kept cursing. I opened the gate and stepped out. One of the women tried to slip into my yard. I slapped her across the face and told her to get lost. Nobody invited her into my home. I realized then that patience is useless with people like these. The only thing that works is force. The woman I slapped went quiet instantly. She saw the coldness in my eyes and knew I wasn't bluffing. But Lu Mei didn't get the message. She put her hands on her hips and lifted her chin, thinking I'd come out to surrender. She sneered and called me cheap. Before she finished talking, I flicked the hemp rope like a whip. The egg-sized knot on the end hit her like a meteor hammer. She was wearing thick winter clothes, so it hurt badly but didn't cause real damage. She tried to curse again, so I whipped her harder. This time the force was just right, painful enough to matter, but I could keep it up all night without getting tired. After a few more lashes, her padded jacket was torn open and cotton stuffing was flying out. The pain finally sobered her up. She started begging me to stop, saying she was wrong. I didn't care. I just found my rhythm. She turned and ran. The other 3 women ran too, afraid I'd turn on them next. I chased after them with the rope. Lume was the slowest because of her injuries. I kept whipping her back as she ran. She stumbled and fell several times, but didn't dare stop. Her screaming drew villagers out of their houses to watch. The smarter ones figured out what had happened. And quite a few people who had been planning to come squeeze something out of me quietly dropped that idea. Grandfather was gone, but clearly I was not someone to push around. Then the brigade leader Li Qinglu shouted, "Stop!" I figured I'd vented enough, so I stopped. He asked me why I'd beaten Lume like that. I pointed at the 4 women and told him to ask those people himself. I warned them this was the first time. Next time would be much worse. Then I walked home without explaining anything. Li Qinglu glared at my back. Apparently the He family, grandfather and I, were the only people in the village who never showed him respect. Now that grandfather was dead, he was already thinking about how to get back at me. The 4 women told him their version, emphasizing how violent I was, but they couldn't hide the fact that they had come to take advantage of me. Li Qinglu realized I was a difficult person to deal with, someone who flips the table the moment you cross him. Then the brigade accountant Zhang Li came over. He was still angry about me beating his nephew that afternoon, and now I'd beaten someone else. He suggested arresting me for illegal hunting. Li Qinglu shot that down immediately. In a mountain village like ours, every man hunts. You couldn't punish me without punishing everyone. Zhang Li tried another angle. He said I'd given away 15 rabbits, so I probably had more hidden at home. They could confiscate the extra game and fine me. He wanted to lock me up, but since my parents were war martyrs, he couldn't charge me over something this small. So the 4 village leaders, the brigade leader, the accountant, the militia captain Chen Lihua, and the women's director Wu Xia, all came to my house together. They found me eating a bowl of cold corn porridge with nothing else. Wu Xia asked with some concern why I didn't even have a vegetable side dish. I told them I only had cornmeal left. Zhang Li jumped in and accused me of lying. He said I must have kept some rabbits for myself. By then I understood exactly why they'd come. They wanted a piece of the pie. They were village cadres, but their lives were only slightly better than ordinary villagers. Meat was still a huge temptation, and none of them were willing to risk their own lives hunting in the mountains. People died in those mountains every year. I called Zhang Li by his childhood nickname, Third Dog, right to his face. Nobody had dared use that name since he became village accountant. He wanted to scold me, but remembered how I'd whipped Lu Mei, so he backed down. The cadres searched my house and found nothing. All the game was safely in my space. They had no choice but to believe I'd only caught 15 rabbits. Li Qinglu and Zhang Li left unhappy. Wu Xia, the women's director, was nicer about it and just told me to control my temper. The beatings that day earned me a reputation as someone not to mess with, which was exactly what I needed. That night, once it was fully dark, I slipped out of the village and headed for the black market near Red Flag Commune, about 30 li away. I'd gone to middle school there, so I knew the road well. I disguised myself as a middle-aged man using grandfather's clothes and some makeup. Using the breathing technique from the body refining manual, I ran the whole distance in just over an hour. I followed some people carrying sacks through the night and found the black market entrance, a dark alley on the edge of town near open fields. 2 guards asked if I was buying or selling. I paid 20 cents and went in. The place was pitch black. People traded in whispers, using flashlights wrapped in cloth. I set up at an empty spot and laid out a piece of pork on a rag. Nobody came for 10 minutes. It was too dark to see. So I pulled out my secret weapon. I took a bowl of stewed ribs from my space and started eating right there in the dark. The smell drifted through the market. People followed their noses straight to me. When they saw a slab of wild boar meat with 2-finger-thick fat on it, they couldn't walk away. The meat sold out instantly at 1 yuan per jean. I secretly added more from my space under cover of darkness. In total, I sold over 130 jean and made more than 130 yuan. When I announced I was out, people were upset they'd been too slow. I told them to wait half an hour. I'd send my son and nephew back with more. While waiting, I browsed the market. I found a stall selling chickens. Thinking about a steady supply of eggs, I stopped. The seller had his face wrapped in black cloth. I checked out his stock. First, a small rooster, under 2 jean, with an undeveloped comb, this year's bird. I paid 2 yuan for it. Then he showed me 2 hens. The first one weighed about 3 jean. I checked her feet and found an extra small toe growing behind the main ones. a sign she was old and past her best egg-laying years. That made sense. Who would sell a hen that was still laying well? The second hen was younger. I bought both hens for 5 yuan total, and the seller threw in his burlap sack. After buying the chickens, a man at the next stall called out to me. He opened his sack and shone a dim flashlight inside. It was a white bird of prey with a sharp hooked beak and talons, lying still at the bottom. A gerfalcon, called a hai dong qing. He wanted 10 yuan for it. A big unity bill. I talked him down. The bird weighed less than a jin and was clearly in bad shape. He admitted he'd tried to tame it by keeping it awake for 3 straight days, but the bird never broke, and the ordeal nearly broke him instead. He was afraid it would die in his hands. I offered 3 yuan, enough to buy a laying hen, and he took it. I grabbed the gerfalcon from the sack. It struggled weakly. It had been starved and hurt. I stuffed it into the sack with my chickens and left the market quickly. In a hidden corner, I put everything into my space. I set the 3 chickens loose on a grassy area inside, then untied the gerfalcon and slaughtered a rabbit for it, cutting the meat into pieces and placing them in front of the bird. Then I left the space, summoned another sack with 50+ jin of boar meat, paid 20 cents again, and re-entered the black market. That was the rule. Every exit and entry counted as a new visit. I barely set up my stall when 2 men approached. By their clothes, they looked like market security. I'd attracted the attention of whoever ran this place. They told me their boss, Brother Wu, wanted to talk business. I followed them deeper into the market. Along the way, I noticed people hiding in the shadows. This operation had real manpower. After 8 or 9 minutes of twisting through alleys, we reached a house. One of them knocked in a coded pattern. They told me to go in and not look around. Inside, the yard was dark, but one room had a lamp on with the door open. I went in. A fat man sat behind a square table, at least 180 or 190 jin. 2 stocky guards flanked him. The door closed behind me. The fat man introduced himself as Zhu Wu, the market's boss. He said he wanted to buy all my pork. Then he started probing. Where was I from? How many people helped me kill the boar? I made up a fake name, Jia Ming, and told him I found the boar half dead at the bottom of a cliff and butchered it with my son. Nothing traceable. Zhu Wu thought he had me figured out. He glanced at my sack and guessed I had about 30 jin left. Then he offered 50 cents per jin, half the price I'd been getting from regular buyers. Before I could even respond to Zhu Wu's lowball offer, his 2 bodyguards moved in on both sides of me. I could see bulges at their waists, handguns. This wasn't a negotiation anymore. They were planning to rob me. Zhu Wu told me to take his 2 men outside to collect the rest of the pork from my son. The guards pressed closer. I calculated the distance, then grabbed both men by the neck and slammed their heads together. They dropped without a sound, out cold for at least 2 hours. In the same motion, I lunged forward and kicked the table straight into Zhu Wu. His feet were still propped up on it, and the impact nearly folded him in half. He toppled backward off his chair like a meatball. Before he could recover, I punched him in the neck and knocked him unconscious. I took the 2 handguns from the guards. Both were Mauser C96 copies, likely made in a Chinese arsenal. Zhu Wu had nothing on him except a wristwatch. I splashed water on Zhu Wu's face. He started to yell, but shut up the second he saw his own gun pointed at him. I told him I'd ask questions and he'd answer. If his story didn't match what his men told me later, I'd take his head off. He talked. The real boss behind the black market wasn't Zhu Wu. It was his uncle, a man named Chang Feng, the deputy director of the Revolutionary Committee in Anping County, 1 level above our commune. Zhu Wu himself was from Zhu Family Ditch Village, and his father was the brigade leader there. I'd heard of that village. Many of its people used to be mountain bandits. After the bandit chief was killed, they supposedly became farmers, but from what Zhu Wu told me, they were still doing shady business behind the scenes. I interrogated the other 2 after waking them. Their stories matched. This black market operation wasn't just trading goods. They'd committed robbery and murder too. When I had everything I needed, I hit all 3 of them hard on the back of the skull. Not hard enough to kill, but enough to guarantee they'd never wake up right. And if they did, they'd be vegetables. I stripped them of weapons and valuables, then found the hidden basement under the house, behind a wardrobe, just as they described. Down there was a treasure trove, crates of supplies, bottles of Mao Tai, and Fingio premium liquor, Soviet cotton coats and blankets. Changfeng clearly had serious connections. I also found weapons, 10 Type 56 semi-automatic rifles, for crates of ammunition, old bolt-action rifles like Mosin-Nagants and Arasaka Type 38s with thousands of rounds, plus wooden-handle grenades. I wondered what Changfeng was planning with an arsenal like that. Zhu family ditch was definitely not what it appeared to be. I decided I'd investigate that village later. I swept everything into my space, supplies, weapons, and finally a lone safe sitting in the empty basement. Then I dumped the 3 unconscious men down there and sealed it up. In the courtyard, I collected more stored goods with my mind. I didn't leave through the front door. I climbed the wall, crossed the rooftop, and slipped away from the market. Out on the street, I used a flashlight I'd taken as loot and figured out I was near the commune, close to the middle school from my memories. I turned off the light to avoid being seen and navigated home by memory through the dark wilderness. I wasn't afraid of the night. My space now held enough firepower, including the Type 56 rifles and plenty of ammunition, to handle even a tiger or a black bear. An hour later, I made it back to the village. Only a few hunting dogs noticed me. I locked up, washed quickly, and went straight to sleep on the Kong without even checking my haul. That could wait until morning. The next morning, I checked the watch I'd taken from Zhu Wu, almost 8 o'clock. I'd slept well. My old cotton blanket was 5 years worn out with the stuffing all clumped together. I had plenty of Soviet military blankets now, but I'd need fabric and someone who could sew to make proper bedding. I'd figure that out later. I went into my space to take stock of everything from the black market raid. Liquor, 96 bottles of Mao Tai, 120 bottles of Fingio, 264 bottles of Beidakang. Cigarettes, 7 cartons of Zhonghua, 20 cartons of Dakiamen, 30 cartons of Shangbation, 18 Soviet military coats, and 20 cotton quilts. Weapons, 10 Type 56 semi-automatic rifles with 4 crates of ammunition, 20 Mosin-Nagants with 5 crates, 35 Japanese Arasaka rifles with 6 crates, 8 handguns of various types, including 2 Mauser C96S, 2 Type 54 pistols, 1 M1911, and 2 revolvers, all with plenty of bullets, plus wooden handle grenades. Enough to arm half a company. What was Changfeng planning? There were also antiques, paintings, and bottles I couldn't identify. The safe held over 13,000 yuan in cash, various ration tickets, including 2 bicycle tickets, 3 sewing machine tickets, and 1 radio ticket, plus gold and silver jewelry, and 34 small gold bars, each 1 liang. The courtyard goods were simpler. 132 bolts of fabric and over 100 sacks of grain, rice, wheat, corn, and sorghum. The grain sacks were stamped with commune warehouse markings. Changfeng was stealing public grain that farmers had handed over as tax. The fabric and canned goods came from supply cooperatives, also stolen. I ate a canned meat for breakfast and headed out. I hid the watch in my space to avoid suspicion. The village was full of people. Nobody was working. I learned that autumn harvest started tomorrow and would last at least a month. Today was a rest day to build up energy. Starting tomorrow, no days off, or you'd lose work points. The harvest meant digging up sweet potatoes and potatoes first, then cutting sorghum, corn, and rice. In our region, heavy snow could fall any time after October, sometimes half a meter overnight. On top of the weather, wild boars and black bears came down from the mountains to eat the crops. Every year during harvest, people got hurt or killed. Each production team organized protection squads of hunters and militia to guard the fields and villagers. I wanted to join the protection squad, full work points without farm labor, but I wasn't a registered hunter or a militiaman. That afternoon, 3 men on bicycles arrived from the commune's revolutionary committee. They were asking every village if anyone had recently killed a wild boar. Supposedly, anyone who reported killing one would get commended by the county. I immediately connected this to my raid on the black market. Changfeng must have figured out that whoever sold wild boar meat was the prime suspect for robbing his operation. He was searching the entire county. The villagers told the investigators that nobody in our village had killed any boar. Only a teenager named Yuntian had caught some rabbits. The people I'd beaten tried to steer suspicion toward me, but once the investigators heard I was just a 15-year-old fresh out of middle school, without even a hunting dog, they crossed me off the list. In their minds, a kid who could catch rabbits was already impressive. Taking down a wild boar would be a death sentence for someone like that. After they left, I started preparing food for the harvest. Everyone had to bring their own meals, with only 30 minutes for lunch. I went into my space and steamed 5 or 6 jin of rice, then cooked over 10 jin of braised pork from the young wild pig. Since I'd started practicing the body refining manual, my appetite had shot up and my strength was growing fast. I could now lift 300 jin of stone easily. I stored the prepared food in a small cabin inside my space. I discovered that anything placed in that cabin stayed perfectly preserved, as if time had stopped. Whatever went in came out exactly the same. The wild boar meat I'd killed was stored in the time-frozen cabin inside my space. Otherwise, it would have rotted quickly with the space's accelerated time flow. The rabbits had been breeding like crazy, nearly 100 now. The 6 piglets had grown to over 10 jin each. Of the 2 hens from the black market, the older one was barely laying. Only 3 eggs in 10 space days. The younger one was producing normally. The little rooster was growing fast. I'd bought him to breed with the hens for more chicks. The gerfalcon had recovered well after 10 days of rest and eating in the space. It was constantly sending me feelings of hunger through some kind of mental connection. I fed it another rabbit. It tore through the meat with its talons and beak, devouring a third of it in one go. I used my mind to send it a message that I was its master. Maybe because it was inside my space, it understood quickly. It flew around me in circles, then landed on my hand. I named it Feiyu, flying feather. Looking closely, I noticed its white feathers with black spots and white talons with black claws. This was a jade-clawed gerfalcon, the rarest and most prized kind. I gave it freedom to fly around the space and hunt rabbits on its own. That night, I laid out 2 of the Soviet quilts on the Kong and slept well. The next morning, harvest began. Everyone gathered at the village warehouse where the brigade leader assigned tasks and handed out tools. I was assigned to the carrying crew, hauling full baskets on a shoulder pole. That job was normally for strong adult laborers who could carry at least 150 or 160 jin while walking. The other villagers stared at me, wondering why a teenage boy got this assignment. I'd never done this work before. In the past, the original boy had been in school, and when he did work for the production team, it was easy stuff like herding cows or cutting pig grass. By the time I picked my carrying pole, all the good ones were taken. What was left was a 2.5-meter long, bowl-thick oval wooden rod, really meant for 2 people carrying heavy stones together, not for 1 person. It was made of locust wood, about 20 jin by itself, hard and sturdy. When I walked to the field carrying it, I stood out. Everyone else had normal poles around 1.6 to 1.8 meters. Mine towered above theirs. The field was already busy. Women pulled up sweet potato and potato vines. Others dug the tubers out with hoes and shovels. Kids loaded them into baskets. My job was to carry the full baskets to the ox carts and mule carts at the field's edge. Early on, it was easy since the carts were close, but as we harvested deeper into the field, we'd have to carry at least 150 or 160 jin over longer distances. Armed militia stood guard around the fields. Every harvest season, wild boars and black bears came down from the mountains to eat crops and sometimes attack people. The militia's weapons were a joke. Aside from 2 commune-issued Type 56 rifles, they had old Arisaka and Zhongjing bolt actions, plus homemade iron pipe guns with basically zero safety. I slid my pole through the rope loops on 2 loaded baskets and lifted, close to 200 jin with the pole included. A few days ago, I couldn't have managed it, but the body refining manual training and good food had made a real difference. At first, I wobbled. I had no technique and walked crooked. Gradually, I found my balance. Once I had control, I started using the breathing method from the manual while carrying, turning the work itself into training. Eventually, I could lift the entire pole with one hand, letting it rest on my shoulder with barely any weight on it. My arm did most of the work. At noon, families brought food to the fields. I slipped into the cornfield when nobody was watching, entered my space, and ate about a jin of rice and 2 jin of braised pork. The morning's training while carrying loads had left me starving. Thanks to the time difference, all of that took only 5 minutes in the real world. When I came back out, I saw families scattered across the harvested fields eating lunch. Better-off families had cornmeal buns with dishes. Poorer ones just had thin porridge. It was the gap between harvests. New grain wasn't in yet, and most families were running low. Qin Yong called me over. The whole Qin family was eating together, Old Qin, his 2 sons, their wives, and Grandma Qian who'd brought the food from home. Their meal was pretty good by village standards. Buns and a big bowl of rabbit stir-fried with potatoes, made from the rabbit I'd given them. They offered to share, but I couldn't take food from people who barely had enough. I told them I'd already eaten and made up a story about bringing dry rations. Just as I was about to leave, a foul smell hit my nose, one I recognized. I looked up and saw a black shape burst out of the cornfield about 20 meters away. A wild boar, charging straight at Grandma Qian, whose back was turned. I only had time to shout, "Grandma Qian, watch out," as I hurled my oversized carrying pole at the boar like a javelin. It hit the animal and staggered it just long enough for me to reach the pole and swing it hard at the boar's head. Old Sheen yelled for everyone to grab tools. He picked up a hoe. His sons grabbed shovels. But the boar was focused on me. It lunged and bit down on the pole. It wouldn't let go, so I gripped the other end and swung the entire boar into the air. At only 150 or 160 gene, it spun like a toy in my hands. People in the field saw a wild boar flying through the air and started shouting at the militia for letting it through. The militia would have protested. They'd guarded all morning without seeing anything, and the boar showed up the minute they left to eat. After several swings, the boar still wouldn't release its bite, so I slammed it straight down into the soft, freshly dug earth. Its 4 short legs drove into the ground. Blood poured from its mouth. It finally let go of the pole and tried to run. I wasn't letting it escape. I raised the pole high and brought it down on the boar's skull. A sharp crack, the skull split open. The boar collapsed and twitched on the ground, finished. Every villager who saw it went silent. They all asked themselves the same question. Could they have smashed a wild boar's skull with a single blow? The answer was no. The 4 women who'd come to harass me the day before were watching too. They realized that when I'd whipped Lu Mei with a rope, I'd been holding back. If I'd been swinging a wooden pole or carrying a gun, they'd be dead. After the danger passed, everyone hurried to finish eating. News about me killing the boar with a carrying pole spread fast. Many didn't believe it until Brigade Leader Li Qinglu came with the militia and saw the dead boar himself. He had it hauled back to the village and announced every family would get a share of pork tonight, divided by head count. In the afternoon, I went back to carrying loads. It felt easier. The body refining manual was working. While I was hauling sweet potatoes, a stocky man under 170 centimeters tall, with big yellow teeth stopped me. He was holding a double-barrel shotgun. I knew him. Huang Er, one of the village's only 2 professional hunters. He said he wanted to take me as his apprentice and teach me to hunt in the mountains. But I saw through him immediately. In my past life as a mercenary, I'd dealt with every kind of person. One look told me his intentions were bad. He didn't want a student. He wanted a human shield to stand in front of him and do heavy labor. In this era, the master-apprentice bond was almost like father and son. Once I accepted, he could control me however he wanted. His actual skills were nothing special. He only hunted rabbits and pheasants near the village, occasionally a lone boar. 10 years ago, he'd gone after a wolf and his own nephew died on that trip, body never found. I didn't know the details, but I suspected there was a dark secret there. If he could let his nephew die, he'd sell me out without hesitation. Besides, I had my space, a secret I could never share. If I ever became a hunter, I'd work alone, trusting only hunting dogs and animal companions. That got me thinking about finding a proper hunting dog. Real ones could only be bought from experienced hunters. Fake ones looked fine but fell apart in actual hunts and could get you killed. While I was thinking about dogs, Huang Er got impatient. He sweetened the offer. He'd talk to Li Qinglu and get me transferred to the militia squad, so I wouldn't have to carry loads during the whole harvest. I refused flat out. He turned nasty and said I'd regret it, that killing one small boar didn't make me somebody. I pulled out my pole and told him my name was He and asked if he wanted to test me. He sobered up quickly. I wasn't some pretty boy. I was the person who'd just crushed a boar's skull. He couldn't point his gun at a person without losing his hunter status, so he backed off and left to find Li Qinglu. I didn't know it yet, but I'd just made another petty enemy. At the end of the workday, we all went to the warehouse to log our work points. Carrying duty earned the highest, 12 points per person. When they called my name, the scorekeeper gave me only 6. The other laborers were shocked. They'd seen me work just as hard or harder than anyone. I stayed calm and asked if there was a mistake. The scorekeeper showed me the record book, My previous entries were all 6 points, from when I used to do light work like herding cows and cutting pig grass. But that wasn't what I'd done today. I didn't give the scorekeeper a hard time. I took the record book and headed to the brigade headquarters to find Li Qinglu. I'd done a full day of heavy carrying and deserved the right number. Tonight was the pork feast from the boar I'd killed, so all the village cadres would be there. Sure enough, when I arrived, the leaders were gathered around several big pots of boiling pork, the smell spreading everywhere. I found Li Qinglu and explained the work points issue. The scorekeeper, Zhang Xing, ran over too. Turns out he was another nephew of accountant Zhang Li and the older brother of Zhang Wei, the guy I'd beaten. So the Zhang family was getting revenge through the work points. Li Qinglu looked at the record book and offered me 10 points instead of 12, saying I was too young for full credit. That's when I brought up the boar meat, the one I'd killed with my own hands, now bubbling in the big pots for the whole village. Li Qinglu casually said it was collective property, and they'd just give me a little extra portion. My face went dark. They wanted to shortchange my work points and eat my boar for free. Fine. If they wouldn't play fair, neither would I. I called him Big Donkey, his old nickname that nobody had dared use since he became brigade leader, right in front of all the cadres and the crowd of villagers who'd gathered for the meat distribution. He exploded. He said I had no manners, no family to teach me right, and pulled out his pen to cross out even my 6 work points as punishment. The militia captain and women's director tried to stop him, but it was too late. I actually laughed. It was so absurd I couldn't help it. Then I thought it through. When the village first chose a brigade leader, my grandfather had been the people's choice. He'd led the old generation against the Japanese, and his own older brother died in that fight. Grandfather only stepped aside because of his age, and because the Li family had more people. But his prestige had always kept Li Qinglu in check. Now grandfather was gone, and Li Qinglu wanted to crush me to prove nobody could defy him anymore. I understood. If I backed down now, everyone would come after me. The only answer was to hit so hard that nobody would try again. As Chairman Mao said, throw 1 punch to prevent 100. Li Qinglu chose to fight with authority. I chose fists. I stepped forward and slapped him across the face with my open palm. He stumbled back 3 or 4 steps and sat down hard on the ground. The villagers were stunned. The 3 hooligans and 4 women I'd beaten before all shrank back, terrified I'd come for them next. Li Qinglu sat in the dirt, pointing at me, stammering about my nerve. Before he could finish, I stepped up and planted my foot on his chest, pressing him flat into the mud. I asked him coldly how many work points he planned to give me, and whether he really thought he could eat my boar for nothing. He struggled, but couldn't move. My foot felt like 1,000 jin to him. When he started having trouble breathing, Militia Captain Chun Lihua stepped in and asked me to let him go and talk things out. Women's Director Wu Xia backed her up, saying Li Qinglu had been wrong and everyone knew what I'd done today. She signaled to Li Qinglu, who nodded desperately. I lifted my foot. He scrambled up, grabbed the record book, backed away from me, and wrote in the new number. 12 points. He threw the book at me. I checked it, confirmed it was correct, and handed it to Wu Xia. Then I raised the second issue, my boar. I said it weighed at least 200 jin, and the production team couldn't just take it without compensation. Li Qinglu argued it was only 150 or 160 jin. I suggested we piece the meat back together and weigh it. He nearly cried. The pork was already in the pots and couldn't be reassembled. He'd thought he could bully a teenager, and now he'd not only failed to establish authority, but had lost his dignity in front of the entire village. I told Li Qinglu the boar couldn't just disappear into his pots for free. He was desperate to end the argument before losing more face, so I pushed the deal. By village hunter rules, half the kill goes to the production team for work points, half stays with the hunter. I declared my boar weighed 200 jin, so 100 jin converted to 1,000 work points, and the other 100 jin I was generously treating the whole village to. I made sure everyone heard it was my treat, not Li Qinglu's gift. I wasn't going to let him use my boar to buy people's loyalty. Wu Xia got Li Qinglu's approval and recorded 1,000 work points in my name, clearly noting it was from the boar. After that I headed home. I wasn't going to sit there eating meat next to that man. What Li Qinglu and Zhang Li had really planned was to skim my work points and add them to their own family's totals. They'd been doing this to people for years, stealing enough extra points to equal a full laborer's annual share. They wanted to do the same with my boar. They never expected me to flip the table on them. Li Qinglu couldn't openly retaliate. My father might have been a war martyr, and he couldn't risk finding out the hard way. He'd have to scheme in the shadows. Back home, I decided to stop going to work. Between grandfather's points before he died, my own earnings, and the 1,000 boar points, our household total was over 3,000, enough to match a strong laborer's yearly output. No reason to suffer Li Qinglu's harassment. The next morning I slept until I woke naturally. It felt great. By 8 I was bored and needed something to do. Hunting wasn't ideal. No snow yet. The brush was still thick, and without a hunting dog I'd be vulnerable to ambush from bears and boars fattening up for winter. Instead, I decided to scout Zhu family ditch. I'd robbed their black market and turned Zhu Wu into a vegetable, and I wanted to see how they were reacting. I sent Feiyu the gerfalcon ahead for aerial reconnaissance. I only knew the village was roughly 20 li from ours. I carried a Type 56 semi-automatic and had a Type 54 pistol and an M1911 loaded and ready in my space. I silently thanked Chong Feng for the free weapons upgrade. I'd gone from one ammo-starved Mosenagant to a full arsenal overnight. The mountains were empty. Everyone was busy with harvest. Then Feiyu sent me a mental image. Since practicing the spirit refining manual, my mental power had grown strong enough to receive simple information from her, and my eyesight had improved dramatically. I could now see details 1,000 meters away. Through Feiyu's eyes I saw that Zhu family ditch truly lived up to its name. It sat in a deep mountain valley running north to south, with 100-meter cliffs on both sides. Only 2 roads in, a gentler one from the south and a narrow one from the north. A perfect defensive position, though also a trap. Block both entrances and wait for their food to run out. I shook that thought off. This was peacetime, not a military operation. After over an hour of hiking, I reached the western cliff above the village. With my enhanced vision, I could see 7 or 8 militia standing guard at the village entrance, plus hidden sentries. Open guards were normal during harvest season, but secret sentries at a village entrance? That was a first. Zhu family ditch was definitely hiding something. My blood started pumping. Life in the 1960s without electronics had been getting boring. Finally, something interesting. I sent Feiyu to survey all of Zhu family ditch. Like our village, they were busy with harvest. The houses were built along the mountain slopes, typical for mountain villages. But at the far north end, there was a raised platform with brick and tile buildings, much nicer than anything else. Feiyu's view showed animal pens up there with pigs, sheep, and other livestock. If the village had secrets, that platform was the place. I moved toward the back mountain to get closer, but then I heard barking. I froze and hid for a few minutes. No people came, but 4 or 5 dogs appeared. I studied them: wolf greens, grass yellows, Mongolian greyhounds, local hunting breeds. Decent bloodlines, but none were true hunting dogs. Real hunting dogs don't bark. They go straight for the target in silence. These were all show, no substance. What I didn't know was that these were offspring of the village's actual hunting dogs. The village leader Zhu Fu had put the rejects out here on the back mountain as guard dogs, hoping natural fighting among them would produce a dominant alpha. He planned to breed that alpha with his real hunting dogs to create an ultimate hunting dog, one that could rival a wolf king and even face tigers. I didn't know his plan, but I wanted these dogs. I'd been looking for hunting dog stock and had no connections to buy any. Real hunting dogs are only sold when a hunter dies. They're too valuable otherwise. These dogs could be my breeding base. With my space's accelerated time, I could develop proper hunting dogs fast. I took a rabbit from my space, cut a deep wound on its leg, and set it down bleeding. Within a minute, the dogs caught the scent and chased it down, tearing it apart. The blood drew more dogs. I released more bleeding rabbits to lure the whole pack toward me, then used my space to snatch them one by one. 23 dogs total. I quickly realized my 100-odd rabbits wouldn't feed them all, so I fenced off a section of the space as a temporary pen. With the guard dogs gone, I approached the back of the platform. From the north side, it was a near-vertical cliff, over 20 meters high. I could climb it, but not if there were gunmen on top. I had Feiyu check. The platform was clear. Then I had an idea. What if I entered my space, attached the space to Feiyu's back, and let her carry me up? I called her down, mounted the space onto her, and went inside. She launched out of the forest, clumsy on the ground but magnificent once airborne. Inside my space, I was carried along with her. At her speed of over 100 kilometers per hour, this meant I could travel that fast too. In an era where most people walked everywhere, that was incredible. After one thrilling loop through the sky, I directed Feiyu to the platform. The moment she landed, a deep, powerful bark erupted. I pulled Feiyu into the space, and the barking stopped. Through the space, I could see the source, a massive white dog, over 80 centimeters tall, weighing maybe 150 or 160 gene, with fangs nearly as long as a wolf's. This dog could probably handle 2 or 3 wolves alone. The platform also had large animal shelters, but most were empty. The livestock had been taken to the fields for harvest work. Only a white mare remained in the stable, her belly swollen with pregnancy. I waited half an hour after the barking stopped. When no one came, I left the space. The big white dog immediately charged at me. I pulled out an iron birch staff, it bit down on the stick, and I sucked both into my space. When I dropped the white dog in with the other 23, they all cowered away from it. This dog clearly held some special status. I explored the 6 brick houses on the platform. In this era of shortages, building 6 brick houses showed serious wealth. I wrapped my shoes in cloth and put on gloves to leave no traces, then climbed through a window. Most rooms were unremarkable, except for one bedroom with a shrine to Guan Yu, the god of war. The incense burner on top was worn smooth from constant handling. When I tried to lift it, it wouldn't budge. I twisted it instead and heard a mechanism click behind the painting. Behind Guan Yu's portrait was a hidden passage leading downward, a secret room built inside the mountain itself. What I saw first took my breath away: gold bars. Large ones and small ones, glimmering everywhere. The large bars numbered at least 1,000, and the small ones were piled in dense heaps. My heart was pounding. All mine. I swept everything into my space until only one large chest remained. Inside, I found a Japanese military uniform with a general's rank insignia and an officer's sword. Beneath that, a radio set, a code book, a thick notebook, and dozens of letters. Now I understood. Zhu Fu was a Japanese spy. The notebook told the whole story. Zhu Fu's father had been a retainer to a Japanese general. After Japan's defeat, the general fled home and ordered the father to stay behind undercover. The father was a skilled fighter but not clever. He became a mountain bandit and was eventually killed. But not all his followers died. Some scattered, some went straight, and some followed the boss's son, Zhu Fu. Zhu Fu had come to the northeast as a child with a Japanese settler group, keeping his identity separate from his father's. After the founding of the New China, he became a Chinese citizen hiding a Japanese identity. Many of his father's former bandits settled in Zhu family ditch as villagers. Later, Zhu Fu married Chang Feng's sister and spent heavily to push Chang Feng into the deputy director position at the County Revolutionary Committee. Chang Feng's protection kept their black market safe from investigation. The notebook also listed numerous other hidden agents, some in very high positions. I decided to expose them all at once. I turned on the radio and broadcast every name, location, and rank from the notebook in plain code across all frequencies nationwide. Even if these people had protectors, nobody would dare shield them after that. I kept the notebook as evidence and left the radio for whoever came to arrest Zhu Fu. Just as I left the secret room, I heard the front door open. I slipped into my space and watched. A short man, about 160 centimeters, with features resembling Zhu Wu. This had to be Zhu Fu. He looked like any ordinary Chinese old man. When he turned his back, I appeared behind him. He sensed me instantly. He was no amateur, but I was faster. One chop to the neck, and he was unconscious. I left him alive for the authorities to interrogate. Outside it was pitch dark, around 8 at night. Only a stableman was still working, feeding the animals in the livestock sheds. I knocked him out easily, then swept every animal into my space. 4 oxen, 5 horses, 3 mules, 2 donkeys. Then the pig and sheep pens, 15 pigs, mostly sows, and over 20 goats. When I saw those big fat black pigs, my mouth watered. I'd been in the 1960s for days and still hadn't tasted this era's famous pork. I called Feiyu, attached my space to her back, and flew home. 10 minutes instead of an hour through mountain trails. Back home, I checked my haul. Beyond all the livestock, the real treasure was the gold from the mountain vault. over 1,000 large bars and a mountain of small ones. This had been a very productive day. I sorted the livestock by type in my space and went to sleep. The next morning I slept in again. No more field work for me. Li Qinglu hadn't come looking for trouble since I'd beaten him, which actually made me more alert. A dog that bites doesn't bark first. After breakfast, I noticed my firewood was running low. Winters here drop to -30 or 40 degrees and last over 5 months. Without heating the Kong, you'd freeze to death. So I grabbed an axe, a saw, a machete, and a rope for show, and headed to the back mountain. With my space, chopping wood was absurdly easy. I targeted big dead trees. One tree equaled several loads for a normal person, and just swept them into the space. No hauling anything downhill. While chopping a dead pine, something fun happened. My axe cracked it open and nuts poured out. Chestnuts, pine nuts, and hazelnuts. A squirrel on a branch above started screaming at me. I'd found its winter stash. I widened the hole. About 3 gene of nuts tumbled out, and I swept them all into my space. The squirrel shrieked a few more times and bolted. It was too small to bother catching. After that, I switched from chopping firewood to hunting squirrel stashes. I tapped every tree with a stick, listening for hollow sounds, then cracked them open. Squirrels are hoarders with terrible memory. They store food in so many places they forget most of them. And they're picky, always selecting the best nuts first. Every stash I found was top quality. That day I cut a dozen dead trees and collected 50 or 60 gene of nuts. In the afternoon I stumbled on a small wild ginseng. Just a young plant, not worth much yet. I dug it up with the surrounding dirt and planted it in my space as an experiment. With the space running at 10 times normal speed, even a young root could age into something valuable. I planted the pine nuts and hazelnuts as seeds in the space too. The conditions inside were far better than outside. They'd sprout quickly. Over the next 2 weeks, while the village rushed to finish the harvest, I spent every day in the mountains. I transplanted wild fruit trees, blueberries, crabapples, wild grapes, into my space. I found 3 more small ginseng plants and moved those in too. I gathered 400 or 500 gene of assorted nuts and piles of dried mushrooms. The Xing'an Mountains in autumn were a treasure house. I also caught another litter of wild piglets, only 4 this time, led by a lone sow that I dropped with 1 headshot from 30 meters. Without killing the mother first, I'd never have caught the babies. By mid-October, the harvest was finished. The weather had been kind, no early snow. Now it was time to distribute grain based on work points. Li Qinglu decided to hand out the grain early since it was still fresh and needed drying. The fine grain, rice and wheat, had to go to the state as tax, so what we got was all coarse grain, sweet potatoes, and sorghum. When the production team announced the distribution, practically everyone who could walk showed up at the warehouse. I went to the warehouse for the grain distribution. Li Qinglu and the cadres sat behind tables with the workpoint books. Families were called one by one. After waiting over an hour, my name came up for 1,200 work points total. Grandfather had earned 2,400 before he passed. I had 800 from my scattered work, plus 1,000 from the boar. The numbers checked out, so I signed. Then they brought my grain, and I nearly lost it. The sweet potatoes were tiny, barely over 1 liang each, and many were broken or damaged from digging. Those would rot in days. The potatoes looked decent on top, but underneath they were smaller than eggs, some no bigger than quail eggs, the kind you'd throw to pigs. The corn ears were under 10 centimeters with sparse kernels. The sorghum was so hollow it would probably float in water. I asked calmly how the grain was sorted. The team leader whispered nervously that it was the brigade leader's orders. So Li Qinglu had coordinated with all the cadres to dump the worst grain on me. If I made a scene, he'd rally the other villagers against me. Nobody wanted this garbage either. Now I understood why Li Qinglu had been so quiet lately. He'd been saving his revenge for grain distribution day. I called him Big Donkey and Zhongli Third Dog to their faces again. Li Qinglu lectured me about respecting elders and claimed he'd even given me extra. The other villagers, not yet seeing the problem, yelled at me to hurry up and stop holding the line. Their ingratitude disgusted me. 2 weeks ago they were praising me for the rabbit meat. Now I was just in their way. I kicked over the baskets. Sweet potatoes and potatoes rolled across the ground. The sharper-eyed villagers immediately saw the truth. This was pig feed. I walked to the table, now just an arm's length from Li Qinglu, and asked coldly if this was really what the brigade was giving me. Some cadres looked away in shame. Li Qinglu sneered and said the weight was correct, so what was my problem? Then he glanced at the militia standing around with their guns, confident I wouldn't dare touch him this time. He underestimated me again. In my previous life, I'd survived automatic weapons, machine guns, and artillery. His militia had 2 Type 56 rifles, a few old bolt actions, and homemade pipe guns that couldn't hit anything. I kicked the table into his belly. He folded over it. Zhang Li, standing beside him, caught the table corner right in the groin. He screamed, dropped, and rolled on the ground, clutching himself. I grabbed Li Qinglu by the collar, threw him on the ground, and started kicking him, targeting pressure points through his padded jacket. Painful, but no real damage. Then a voice shouted, Yuntian, stop! I heard a bolt being pulled. Li Qinglu's second son, Li Xuexiang, was pointing a Type 56 rifle at me. I stopped. Dead silence for about 30 seconds. Li Qinglu got up, rubbing his body, and started lecturing me again about being lawless. Before he could finish, I kicked him in the stomach. He stumbled backward right into his son, blocking the gun. I lunged forward, grabbed the rifle by the barrel, and ripped it from Li Xuexiang's hands. I dropped the magazine, dumped all the rounds, racked the bolt to eject the chambered round, then tossed the empty rifle to Militia Captain Chen Lihua. He caught it. Zhang Li got up clutching his groin and accused me of attacking him and the brigade leader. I pointed out that dozens of people saw me. I never touched him with a finger. He sputtered that I'd rammed the table into his crotch. I glanced at his hands still cupping himself and set his equipment down there was just for decoration anyway. Works or not made no difference. The whole crowd burst out laughing. Everyone in the village knew Zhang Li had been married 8 or 9 years without producing a single child. He couldn't form a sentence. I cut him off. Did they really think they didn't deserve a beating after what they gave me? I pointed at the ruined sweet potatoes scattered on the ground. Zhang Li had no comeback. He and Li Qinglu had planned this together, expecting a 15-year-old to swallow the insult quietly. He mumbled that there must have been a mix-up with the baskets. I let him save face and told him to weigh out my proper share. This time they gave me decent grain without any tricks. Zhang Li even sent 2 militiamen to carry everything to my house, not out of kindness, but to get me away before I caused more trouble during the rest of the distribution. Other families were getting their work points skimmed too, and he didn't want me around for that. But that wasn't my business. If those people couldn't stand up for themselves, no one could help them. My share came to over 300 jin of sweet potatoes, over 100 jin each of potatoes, corn, and sorghum, plus several dozen jin of fine grain after the state tax was paid. Plenty for one person. It was really 2 people's ration since grandfather's points were included. I stored everything in my space. The corn and sorghum went straight into the ground as seed. With all the new livestock I'd acquired, I needed to grow more feed. I also decided to sell the 4 dead wild sow carcasses at the black market tonight. My space had domestic pigs now that would be ready to eat soon, and I could always hunt more boar whenever I wanted. Around 8 that night, I sent Feiyu into the air and flew toward Red Flag Commune, taking it easy. About 10 li outside the village, I spotted a flashlight beam moving along the mountain road, someone on a bicycle. I had Feiyu swoop closer. It was Li Xuexiang, Li Qinglu's second son, with a full sack strapped to the back of his bike. Heading toward the commune this late with a load could only mean one thing: the black market. Li Qinglu had been tormenting me at every turn. Time to collect some interest. I had Feiyu land ahead at a bend in the road. I stepped out of the space with a long wooden pole. Just as Li Xuexiang rode past, I jammed the pole into his front wheel. The bike stopped dead and he flew off, landing face first on the ground. Before he could get up, I chopped the back of his neck and knocked him out cold. His flashlight had sailed off into the distance, still glowing faintly. I checked him over with gloves on. He had a Type 56 rifle and a cloth bag on his back, confiscated. A small pouch on his belt held 20 or 30 rounds, taken. The sack on the bike was full of freshly harvested rice, still slightly green. That greedy Li Qinglu. The grain wasn't even dry yet, and he was already sending his son to sell it on the black market. Who knew how much collective property he'd been pocketing behind everyone's backs? I'd need to investigate him properly. If possible, I wouldn't mind sending him straight to prison. I swept away my footprints, climbed back into the space, and flew on toward the commune. Li Xuexiang could keep sleeping on the ground. The black market was too dangerous for him. I'd go in his place. What I didn't know was that my plaintext broadcast from Zhufu's radio half a month ago had triggered a massive earthquake across the Northeast's political circles. Officials were arrested without warning, and their protectors got dragged down too. Changfeng was behind bars. The black market had shut down briefly, but reopened 3 days ago under a new boss named Qianjiu. Nobody connected any of it to a 15-year-old boy in a remote mountain village. I followed the crowd to the black market entrance. Before the guards could speak, I handed them a piece of sow meat as a sample and asked them to tell their boss I had product to sell. About 10 minutes later, a guard returned with a massive man, nearly 190 centimeters tall. He introduced himself as Tu Lei and shook my hand, then tried to crush it. I squeezed back harder. After a minute, his hand was trembling. I let go first and complimented his strength, letting him save face. He knew I'd been holding back. He led me through the dark alleys to a room where a young man of about 27 sat waiting. This was Qianjiu, the new black market boss. 2 big bodyguards flanked him, one being Tu Lei. I gave my name as Niafeng, a hunter. He asked about quantity and price. I checked my space mentally and told him roughly 500 jin of wild sow meat at 1 yuan per jin. He balked. That was retail price, no margin for him. He offered 70 cents. I pointed out this was all sow meat, not boar, with fat a finger thick after autumn feeding, better than domestic pork. After some haggling, we settled on 85 cents per jin. He sent men with a cart to follow me. I led them to a grove near the market, loaded the meat alone, and brought it back for weighing. Total, 648 jin. Qianjiu rounded up to 650 jin and paid me 555 yuan, rounding up again as a goodwill gesture. He told me to come back anytime with more. I pocketed the cash and left. Behind me, Qianjiu's people were already calculating. At this price, they could transport the meat to other cities and double their money. Meat was scarce everywhere in China. Qianjiu wanted to keep me as a long-term supplier and maybe recruit me. I called Feiyu and flew home in minutes. Meanwhile, Li Qinglu was up all night chain-smoking homemade cigarettes, waiting for his son who never came back. He couldn't send a search party. How would he explain why his son was riding to the commune in the middle of the night with a sack of grain? Everyone would figure out he'd been stealing collective grain and selling it at the black market. Losing his position would be the least of it. He could face execution. Li Shuexiang eventually woke up on the ground with a sore neck. No other injuries, but his rifle was gone, and so was his ammunition belt. That gun belonged to the County Armed Forces Department, not the village. If they investigated, both he and his father would be in serious trouble. He found the bicycle nearby, at least. It was the commune's reward to the village, which Li Qinglu had claimed for himself. Li Shuexiang rode home in a daze, not knowing it was me who'd taken everything. Li Shuexiang tried to ride home, but discovered several spokes on his front wheel were broken from my pole. He couldn't ride, so he had to carry the bike, a solid 1960s model weighing 40 or 50 jin. With no strength from his lazy lifestyle, he stumbled along for over 10 li, arriving home around 5 in the morning and collapsing unconscious from exhaustion. Li Qinglu and his wife had been up all night worrying. When they heard their son had been robbed of both the grain and the rifle, Li Qinglu panicked. The grain was replaceable. Nobody knew he'd taken it. But the gun belonged to the County Armed Forces Department. Every year they inspected and cataloged village weapons. A missing Type 56 would be discovered, and even if nobody used it for a crime, the serial number wouldn't match. His best option was to secretly buy a replacement and hope the inspectors didn't check too carefully. Meanwhile, I slept soundly and woke up naturally, though the Kong had gone cold overnight. I still hadn't mastered keeping the fire going. Harvest was over and the production team didn't need everyone working. Villagers were heading into the mountains for wild goods before the snow came. I grabbed my Mosin and joined the stream of people heading uphill. My pace was much faster than the groups of women gathering mushrooms and nuts. Qin Yang's wife, Zhao Ting, called out to me as I passed, asking if I was going hunting. I told her I was just wandering nearby, shooting squirrels and birds, carrying the rifle for safety. Then Huang Er appeared with his double-barrel shotgun and 2 scrawny yellow hunting dogs. Their frames were decent, but he'd raised them poorly, skin and bones. They probably couldn't hold down even 100 jin boar. He invited me to join him. I refused flat out. I wasn't getting anywhere near this man. He tried another angle, asked to borrow my Mosin Nagant. I knew his game. Once he got the rifle, he'd find excuses never to return it. I shut him down cold. He tried again, claiming he knew where a bear den was. He said if I lent him the rifle, he'd shoot the bear and we'd split the money 50-50. The women around us started egging me on, dreaming of bear meat, not caring one bit about my safety. I saw through the lie instantly. The temperature was low, but there was no snow yet, meaning the mountains still had plenty of food. No bear would be hibernating this early. It would starve. Huang had no idea where any bear den was. He'd made it up to get my gun. I refused and walked away fast. Behind me, the women turned on Huang, demanding he go find this bear den himself. He'd talked himself into a corner. I almost felt sorry for him. A mob of married village women was something even a hunter should fear. The women didn't dare pressure me, though. I'd beaten the brigade leader twice, and young men like me were unpredictable. Nobody knew which word might set me off. Free of the crowd, I headed deeper into the mountains. With my space, my arsenal, and my skills, staying on the outskirts shooting sparrows was pointless. The only thing I lacked compared to a professional hunter was proper dogs, but that was being handled. 8 of the female dogs I'd taken from Zhu family ditch were already pregnant in my space, all carrying pups from that massive white dog. Once those puppies were born, I'd have dozens to work with. The best way to train hunting dogs is to let an experienced one lead the newcomers on actual hunts. But I didn't have a trained dog yet, so I'd have to start from scratch. Even in the 1960s, a trained hunting dog cost serious money, 10 yuan for a young prospect, 30 to 50 for one with mountain experience, and over 100 for a scent dog that could track by smell. The legendary ones that could catch scent from the air were priceless. I skipped the outer mountains where villagers gathered and headed straight for Wild Ox Ridge, deep enough that only professional hunters went there. The trees grew taller and thicker, dimming the light. Without a hunting dog to warn me, I moved carefully. The wild resources here were far richer. I found at least 10 chestnut trees loaded with spiny brown fruit. Squirrels were busy harvesting them. After checking for large animals, I climbed a tall chestnut tree, pulled a long bamboo pole from my space, and beat the branches hard. In 10 minutes, I'd knocked down almost every chestnut cluster. I climbed down carefully. The ground was covered in sea urchin-like spiny shells, and used my mind to sweep them all into my space. I discovered I could collect any non-living object within 10 meters just by covering it with my mental energy. While I was happily gathering chestnuts, I heard snorting. A wild boar appeared and started cracking open fallen chestnut shells with its hooves, eating the nuts inside with practiced skill. Watching it from up in the tree, a strange idea hit me. Wild boars have even better noses than dogs. What if I trained a boar the way people train hunting dogs? In the animal world, size equals fighting power. Hunting dogs weigh maybe 100 gene and need to gang up on a boar. But the Shingan mountain boars are the largest subspecies. Adult males easily exceed 500 gene. Even tigers and bears avoid them head-on. The legendary pig gods, reaching 1,000 gene, made even apex predators retreat. If I could raise a pig god-level boar as a companion, nothing in these mountains could threaten me. And why stop there? With my space, I could eventually raise tigers and bears too. But breeding would start with babies. I already had 10 piglets in my space. Those would be my future projects. This adult boar was just meat. I pulled out the Mosin Nagant, chambered a round, and squeezed the trigger. One shot, clean headshot. The boar dropped instantly. I waited 2 minutes in the tree to make sure nothing else was coming, then climbed down and pulled the carcass into my space. Inside, I bled it, skinned it. Boar hide is incredibly tough from rubbing against pine trees and mud, and hung the intestines on a tree branch as an offering to the mountain god. The rest I chopped into chunks and fed to the dogs from Zhu family ditch. They'd been living in the space for over 10 days now and had settled in. I planned to keep them there permanently as breeding stock. Once winter came and snow fell, I wanted to catch some wolves and crossbreed them with the dogs to produce fiercer wolf-dog hybrids. I continued wandering Wild Ox Ridge, collecting fruit trees my space didn't have yet. Then I came across something remarkable, a tree about 1 arm span thick, half dead and blackened, half still green and alive. Walking around it, I saw the scorch marks. Lightning had struck it but failed to kill it completely, creating this strange half-living, half-dead spectacle. I tapped the lightning-struck tree with a stick. Below 2 meters it sounded solid, but higher up it was clearly hollow with something inside. I climbed up and shone a flashlight through the hole the lightning had blasted open. The inside was packed with black bees, wild black bees, an extremely prized species that produces top-quality honey. I had to collect them. Once snow came and temperatures plummeted through the long winter, most of the colony would die. Only a handful would survive to rebuild in spring. The bees were already in a semi-hibernation state, so I used my mental energy to sweep them into my space batch by batch. Then I collected the honeycomb full of larvae and the overflowing honey-filled frames. The honey was a clear amber color with a delicate fragrance. I fought the urge to eat some on the spot. I estimated about 150 gene of honeycomb, which would yield at least 50 gene of pure honey. Wild honey sold for over 3 yuan per gene at purchasing stations. That meant at least 150 yuan. I decided to head home immediately. Greed is a hunter's worst enemy, and I still needed to build beehives. Grandfather had known some carpentry, and the original boy had picked up enough from helping him. My work wouldn't be pretty, but functional enough for the bees. But luck wasn't done with me. About 6 or 7 li from the village, in a mountain hollow, I stumbled onto a whole herd of wild boars gorging on wild kiwi fruit, fattening up for winter. I was upwind, and the lead boar caught my scent from over 1,000 meters away. This old beast knew that humans without guns were easy prey, so it led its entire clan charging straight at me. The herd was massive. The lead male was over 500 gene. Behind him were 5 younger males around 200 gene each, last year's offspring staying close for winter warmth. Then 4 fat sows, 7 or 8 smaller females, and finally a few piglets that had lost their baby stripes and turned yellow. They were hidden in the hollow, and without hunting dogs I didn't spot them until they were less than 100 meters away. If they'd burst out when I was even closer, I might have been hurt. I wished I had a machine gun. Instead, I grabbed a loaded Type 56 from my space. All of them were kept with full magazines ready to fire. I aimed at the charging leader's head and started squeezing the trigger as fast as I could. When the first rifle was empty, I pulled out a second one and kept shooting. No time to reload. After 30 rounds, the lead boar was down along with 3 young males and 8 sows of various sizes. The rest scattered. I wiped sweat from my forehead. That was way too close. But the haul was incredible. 12 boars total, none under 200 gene. About a kilometer away, Huang Er had heard the sustained gunfire. He recognized the sound of a Type 56 and figured someone had hit big game. He grabbed his shotgun and called his 2 dogs, Big Wolf and Second Wolf, names far more impressive than the dogs themselves, and headed toward the sound, hoping to show up and claim a share of the meat. He'd only gone 100 meters when a boar burst from the bushes in front of him, one of the young males that had escaped me. Startled, Huang Er fired his double barrel on reflex. The spread caught a few steel pellets on the boar's head, but the panicked shot mostly missed. The boar spun and kept running. It had already learned what guns could do. Huang Er still had 1 shell left in his double barrel, but the wounded boar was running for its life, and he couldn't find a clean shot. Each shell cost over 10 cents. The casing was reusable, but the gunpowder and steel pellets were gone once fired. While he hesitated over the cost, his dog Big Wolf finally showed some courage and charged the boar head-on. It was a fatal mistake. The panicked boar smashed into the dog and ripped open its neck with a tusk. Big Wolf went down and couldn't get up. With the path clear, the boar bolted. Huang Er fired his last shell at its rear, but the distance was too far. Only a few pellets hit, barely slowing it down. If he'd just spent the ammunition earlier and let both dogs pin the wounded boar while he reloaded, he might have taken it. But there are no ifs. Big Wolf bled out and died. Huang Er buried the dog under some rocks on the mountainside. That's the tradition for hunting dogs. He'd lost a dog worth 200 yuan and gained nothing. He headed to where he'd heard my gunfire, hoping to claim a share. But when he arrived, there was nothing, just bloodstains on the ground. Not even a single shell casing. I'd cleaned up everything before leaving. I was already heading home. Near the village, a big, colorful male pheasant burst from the grass. Its long tail feathers made it slow. I swapped to my Mosin Nagant. The Type 56 rifles were all stolen goods that would raise questions, aimed at its head, and fired. Clean kill. I carried it upside down to drain the blood as I walked. Meanwhile, inside my space, I was processing the 12 wild boars. I bled and butchered all of them. The uncastrated males would go to feed the dogs. Their meat tasted bad and would only fetch 30 or 40 cents per gene anyway. The 8 sows were much better eating and could sell for around 1,000 yuan total. As I neared the village, I ran into a group of women gathering mountain goods before the snow came. Most greeted me warmly and complimented me for bagging a pheasant. They were decent people and didn't ask for a share. But one woman stopped me and offered to set me up with a wife. I vaguely recognized her, surname Wang, married into the Li family. Her husband had been killed by wolves while hunting about half a year after their wedding, and people started calling her a husband killer. I used to dismiss that kind of superstition, but after transmigrating into another body, I wasn't so sure anymore. I politely declined, saying I was too young to think about marriage. Having lived 2 lives, I knew there's no such thing as kindness without motive. She and I had no connection. She clearly wanted something. Wang the widow saw the look in my eyes, cold, emotionless, like staring at livestock, and backed off. She wanted to introduce me to her daughter, Li Zhaodi, a girl who'd never been to school, was malnourished, barely 150 centimeters tall, and thin as a stick. I had no idea where the woman found her confidence. If I'd known what she was planning, I'd have spat in her face. Back home, I gathered woodworking tools and lumber, went into my space, and built 3 beehives with frames. Then I squeezed honey from the combs into a wine jar that held about 10 gene. It filled to about 13 or 14 gene of honey. I also filled 2 empty canned food jars with about a gene each. I had no more containers, so the rest stayed in the combs inside the hives. The space maintained a constant 25 degrees, which woke the black bees from their near hibernation. They were already buzzing around looking for nectar. For dinner, I made wild pheasant soup with white rice in the space and opened a bottle of erguo too. The quality was impressive, no headache at all. I drank the whole bottle and barely felt anything. This body could handle its liquor. The next morning, I headed to the commune's supply cooperative to buy containers for the honey. The moment I stepped outside, the temperature had dropped sharply. The sky was thick with clouds. Heavy snow could fall any time. I put on a deerskin coat, a hat, and tucked my hands into my sleeves. The north wind pushed at my back the whole way south, and I reached the cooperative in just an hour. The staff were surprised to see anyone in this weather. Since I was their only customer, they were actually friendly for once. I bought 10 ceramic jars that held 10 gene each. No ration tickets needed. Then I spotted vacuum flasks behind the counter. In northeastern winters, having hot water available was essential. The saleswoman said I needed a ticket, so I fished one out from the stash I'd taken from Zhu Wu's black market. I bought the large flask for 10 yuan. After that, I went on a shopping spree: towels, toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, an iron wok for my space kitchen, bowls, chopsticks to replace the ancient ones at home. Everything was cheap. The 1960s economy was tough, but money went far. My whole haul cost only 83.5 yuan. I carried everything outside in batches, telling the staff I had a cart waiting. I knew they'd never bother checking. These workers would rather lie down than sit up. Coming to the commune with the wind at my back had been easy. Going home against it was brutal. Even with my strength and everything stored in the space, walking was a struggle. So I summoned one of the horses from my space, a red one-eyed, borrowed from Zhu family ditch. With snow about to fall, nobody from that village would be out to notice. I saddled up and rode carefully. I'd ridden horses a few times in my past life and found my balance quickly. The freezing wind tore at my face, so I wrapped a new towel around it. My eyes still streamed with tears since I had no goggles. Halfway home, snowflakes started falling. Then it got heavier and heavier. About a li from the village, I stopped and put the horse back into my space. No way to explain where it came from. I walked the rest in the snow. The snow had come late this year, and it was making up for lost time. In just 20 minutes, a thick layer already covered the ground. I rushed home and lit a fire in the Kong immediately. Even though I could live in my space, not heating the house would make people suspicious. I checked the house for drafts, then went to the yard and grabbed several thick logs. I cut them to size and propped them under the main roof beam. In this region, half a meter of snow overnight was normal, and mud brick houses could easily collapse under the weight. Sometimes you had to go out and sweep the roof several times a night. Looking at this house that was older than me, I decided to build a proper brick house next spring. But bricks, cement, and lime required both money and connections. Even government units had to plan ahead to buy them. I'd figure it out later. The snow kept falling until past 6 in the evening with no sign of stopping. Before bed, I made a rake from a bamboo pole and a board, cleared the roof from the ground, and swept all the snow into my space so it wouldn't pile up in the yard. Inside the space, I built a simple stone stove, seasoned my new iron wok with pork fat, and boiled water for the vacuum flask. No more heating water from scratch every time. I washed and organized all my purchases, then got to work extracting the remaining honey. After a long session of squeezing combs, I filled 4 full jars and most of a fifth. Each jar held about 13 or 14 gene of honey since it's denser than water. I continued practicing the body refining manual, now on the second level. My appetite, strength, and even my height were increasing. I could feel a mild ache in my growth plates below the knees. My power efficiency had improved dramatically too. Before, a 100-gene punch would only deliver 60 to 80 gene of impact. Now the same punch landed with full force or more. I tested myself by lifting the 500-gene boar I'd killed. I could do it, though it took real effort. At this rate, hand-to-hand combat with bears or tigers might eventually be possible. The snow didn't stop until the next morning. Over half a meter in many places. The first snowfall this heavy meant next year would probably be a good harvest year. I cleared the roof again with my rake, shoveled a narrow path through the yard, and didn't bother with the rest. It might just snow again. The ground was too soft to walk on yet. I need to wait a few days for the snow to partially melt and refreeze before heading into the mountains. Just as I was heading inside, Qin Yong called out. Old Qin had sent him to check on me. He asked quietly if I'd heard. The accountant Zhang Li's father, Zhang Yudao, had his house collapse under the snow. They were still digging it out. That perked me right up. Zhang Yudao had been throwing his weight around the village for years, riding on his son's position as accountant. Everyone was too afraid of Zhang Li's retaliation to push back, which only made the old man worse. Hearing about Zhang Yudao's house collapse confirmed I'd made the right call reinforcing my roof beam the night before. My house was even older than his. Normally roofs collapse at night when people are asleep and don't clear the snow. But Zhang Yudao's fell in the morning. The old man had 3 sons and several grandsons, but he never asked any of them to clear his roof. Each son assumed someone else would do it. Nobody did. By dawn, the beam gave way and the whole roof came crashing down on the sleeping couple. I decided to go watch the show. Most of the village was already gathered outside. Zhang Yudao had bullied people for years riding on his son Zhang Li's position, so almost nobody wanted to help. Only the Zhang clan's closer relatives reluctantly pitched in. When they cleared the wreckage, they found Zhang Yudao dead. A roof beam had cracked his skull. His wife, Zhang Wang, was alive but barely breathing. Then Zhang Li's 3 brothers started arguing over who would take their mother to the hospital and who would stay to clean up. The real reason for the fight was that Zhang Jun, the second brother, believed their parents had hidden valuables and wanted to find them first. Zhang Li had his own reason. He'd hidden something dangerous at his parents' house and desperately needed to retrieve it. Zhang Li paid Zhang Jun 50 yuan to go to the hospital, then sent the eldest brother away on funeral errands, leaving himself alone at the ruined house. While watching the scene, I noticed a glint in the black ash of the collapsed Kong. Using my Space's remote collection ability, I pulled the object in without anyone noticing. Back home, I examined it. A small wine jar, blackened with soot. Nothing special looking. But inside was a booklet. It turned out to be an account ledger recording every work point that Li Chenglu and Zhang Li had stolen from villagers, whose points were skimmed, how much, and when. At year's end, these stolen points were added to their own family's totals, giving them extra grain. Zhang Li had kept this ledger as insurance. If Li Chenglu ever tried to kill him, this evidence would drag Li Chenglu down too. He'd given it to his father Zhang Yudao for safekeeping, who hid it in the wine jar inside the Kong. Only the old couple knew its location. Now Zhang Yudao was dead and his wife was unconscious. Zhang Li had lost his trail completely. This ledger was exactly what I needed. When the time was right, I'd hand it to the commune authorities. With this evidence, both Li Chenglu and Zhang Li would face severe punishment, possibly execution. I checked grandfather's funeral guest book to see if any Zhang family members had paid their respects. Not a single one. If they didn't bother coming to grandfather's funeral, I had no obligation to attend Zhang Yudao's. Just then, someone called from outside my gate. I opened the door and almost couldn't believe it. Li Chenglu himself. What did this old bastard want now? He clearly didn't want to be here either. We stood facing each other in the yard. I was facing south with the wind at my back. He faced into the wind, eyes streaming with tears. I said nothing and just stared at him. He cracked first. Yuntian, Uncle needs your help with something. Can't help? I said before he could even explain. He pressed on anyway. Zhang Yudao is dead. Can you make him a coffin? Li Chenglu's request made my blood boil. He wanted me to make a coffin for Zhang Yudao, or go buy one. I told him straight that I'd never built a coffin in my life, and grandfather's had been prepared years before his death. I asked him why he was playing dutiful grandson for the Zhang family. He ignored my refusal and walked away saying it was decided. Decided? I never agreed to anything. That old bastard could go play with himself. I needed to let off steam, so I did something productive. I found old newspapers used for wallpaper and cut out individual characters to compose 2 anonymous tip letters. The first reported Li Chenglu and Zhang Li for stealing work points and pocketing the surplus. The second reported Li Chenglu for losing a government-issued Type 56 rifle, one I now had in my space. I flew to the commune on Feiyu, bought envelopes at the post office, and dropped the letters into the complaint boxes for the commune government and the armed forces department. Then I flew back and made sure to show my face around the village several times, establishing that I'd been home all day. The next morning around 9, over a dozen soldiers arrived on bicycles and military tricycles. They presented documents and demanded to inspect the village armory. All cadres had to be present. The militia captain Chen Lihua opened the weapons storage. The soldiers checked their inventory list and found one Type 56 missing. Chen Lihua pulled out a logbook showing Li Chenglu had borrowed it over a year ago. Li Chenglu stammered and couldn't explain. He'd planned to buy a replacement, but hadn't gotten around to it. He wasn't stupid. He quickly realized someone had set him up, probably someone in the village who also had his son's stolen rifle. Eventually, he confessed that his son had been ambushed on a road and the gun was taken. The armed forces people had received a tip about him selling weapons, but now he claimed robbery. Either way, the gun was gone and he was responsible. Then more bicycles arrived. Commune government officials responding to my other letter, which included the account ledger. They wanted Li Chenglu and Zhang Li brought in for questioning. When they met the armed forces team already there, both sides compared notes and realized Li Chenglu's problems ran deep. They interrogated him on the spot. He couldn't deny it and confessed everything. They searched his house and found over 3,000 yuan in cash plus various ration tickets. Zhang Li was caught next, over 2,000 yuan hidden at his home. He'd been spending heavily on his nephews, trying to secure someone to care for him in old age since he had no children. Both were taken away immediately. Zhang Li didn't even attend his own father's funeral. Zhang Yudao ended up wrapped in a reed mat and buried without ceremony. Nobody in the Zhang family would pay for a proper burial. Chen Lihua was temporarily appointed brigade leader while also keeping his militia captain role. The sentencing came quickly. Both men had stolen enormous amounts with no one willing to protect them. They each received 1 bullet. While the village buzzed with excitement over all this, I stayed home playing nursemaid in my space. The dogs from Zhu family ditch had given birth to 38 puppies. My future hunting pack was taking shape. The pregnant white mare also delivered, a blue-gray baby mule, a mixed breed. The space was suddenly full of new life, and I gave everyone a feast to celebrate. The grass-eaters were easy to feed. The space had endless premium pasture. But the 24 adult dogs were expensive to maintain. They were all large breeds, the lightest over 60 gene. Only 7 or 8 days had passed outside, but inside the space it had been over 2 months, which is why the puppies had already arrived. The 1,000+ gene of boar meat I'd stockpiled was nearly gone. 24 large dogs eat an enormous amount, even with sweet potatoes and sorghum mixed into their food. I'd been tossing rejected rabbits to the pack to keep their hunting instincts sharp, which also helped control the rabbit population in the space. After several days of melting and refreezing, the snow was firm enough to walk on. I put on my deerskin coat, grabbed the Mosin Nagant, and headed into the mountains to restock meat. I finally understood why most hunters only kept a few dogs. Feeding them was brutal, especially in an era when people themselves could barely eat. Some villagers gathering mountain goods near the village greeted me. A few offered to trade for any game I brought back. Nobody dared ask for freebies anymore. They knew better. Among the gatherers, I noticed 6 people who stuck out, 4 men and 2 women, dressed slightly better than locals. These were the sent-down educated youth. One girl said she wished she could follow me hunting because she hadn't eaten meat in ages. Another remembered the boar I'd killed during harvest with a carrying pole. A pimple-faced guy named Li Xiang scoffed, saying anyone could kill a boar with a gun and that I only ever brought back small game. He had no idea what he was talking about. I left them behind and went deep. After 2 months of training inside the space, I'd completed the 2nd level of the body refining manual. My strength and control had improved significantly. I could even step lightly enough to leave only shallow prints in the snow. Near a snow drift, I found a cluster of wild pheasants huddled together for warmth, heads all tucked in, completely defenseless. I crept within 10 meters and swept all 6, 2 males, 4 females, into my space. Inside, the 3 domestic chickens I'd bought had already hatched over 20 chicks in 2 months of space-time. The wild ones would add nice variety. Once far enough from the village, I summoned the big white dog from Zhu family ditch. Over 160 gene, capable of fighting a wolf one-on-one. I didn't need it to hunt, just to warn me of danger. The winter mountains were full of threats, starving wolves, bears that hadn't eaten enough before hibernation, and wild boar herds bold enough to raid villages. But my luck seemed spent after those pheasants. All morning I found nothing except a few squirrels. I ate a quick lunch in my space and decided to give it 2 more hours. I was singing a children's rhyme to myself. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Going up the mountain to catch a tiger, didn't catch a tiger, caught a little squirrel, when I heard gunfire in the distance. Multiple weapons, rifles, shotguns, homemade pipe guns, firing rapidly. That much shooting meant trouble. There's an unwritten rule among mountain hunters. If someone's in danger, help if you can. Of course, some people saved fellow hunters and were repaid with gratitude. Others saved the wrong person and got killed for it. I sent Feiyu up for aerial reconnaissance and moved closer carefully. Through her eyes I saw a pack of dholes, wild dogs even more vicious than wolves, surrounding 4 hunters and their hunting dogs. The hunters hadn't climbed trees because they couldn't abandon their dogs. Without the dogs, they'd be trapped up there with no way down. Fighting together with the dogs was their only chance at survival. I approached quietly. Neither the hunters nor the dholes noticed me. At 500 meters out, I stopped and raised my Mosin Nagant. This was a Soviet-made original with a theoretical range of 2,000 meters. Whether you could hit anything at that distance depended entirely on the shooter. With my eagle-sharp eyesight and solid marksmanship, 500 meters was well within my ability. I chambered a round and fired. The 7.62 millimeters bullet traveled at 820 meters per second and blew a dhole's head apart in under a second. The 4 surrounded men saw one dhole drop dead in front of them, then heard the gunshot a moment later. The youngest, maybe 18 or 19, told his eldest brother that someone was behind them. He was loading an old homemade pipe gun with gunpowder and steel pellets, a tricky weapon where too little powder meant no range and too much could blow up in your face. The eldest brother, a dark-skinned man in his 30s, carried a Zhongjing rifle. The second brother, about 30, had a single-barrel shotgun. The third brother, 23 or 24, sat against a tree clutching his right forearm. A dhole had bitten him and blood was still flowing. These 4 were brothers. The older 2 were married, and they'd come hunting to get game for the third brother's wedding. They'd killed a roe deer but didn't leave fast enough, and the blood attracted the dhole pack. The eldest recognized that someone was helping from several hundred meters away with incredible accuracy. 2 headshots, no flukes. He told his brothers to stay sharp and hold on. I fired 3 more shots, 3 more dead dholes. Then I reloaded with a fresh stripper clip. The second brother worried aloud that I might be running low on ammunition after 5 shots. Hunters usually didn't carry much. The eldest took a deep breath and said even a small supply should mean at least 10 more rounds. I fired again, 3 more kills across the next clip. 9 dholes down total, and the pressure on the brothers eased considerably. I couldn't see any more targets through the trees, so I reloaded, picked up all my spent casings, prepared 2 extra clips, and started moving closer. A muffled boom echoed from the brother's position. The youngest had fired his pipe gun at 3 dholes that got too close. His powder charge was light, so only one was seriously wounded, losing an eye. The other two were barely hit, but spooked enough to jump into the open. I caught them instantly, 2 shots so fast they sounded like one. Both dropped. That was 11 doles I'd killed. The pack leader, seeing its numbers devastated, ordered a retreat. Doles rely on numbers to overwhelm prey. With over 20 members lost between my kills, the brothers' earlier fighting, and the wounded that fled, this pack might not survive the winter. The 4 brothers exhaled with relief. They were alive. I lowered my rifle and walked toward them slowly, keeping my right hand on the gun just in case, finger near the trigger. At 50 meters, I stopped approaching with the weapon raised. No need to alarm the people I'd just saved. The 4 brothers saw me approaching and didn't raise their weapons. When they got a look at my face, they were surprised, clearly younger than 20. The eldest introduced himself as Shi Ing, then his brothers, Shi Xiong, Shi Hao, and Shi Jia. They were from Big Rock Village. He thanked me for saving their lives and said I could call on them anytime. I introduced myself as Yuntian from Kaoshan Village. The second brother, Shi Xiong, perked up. His father-in-law lived in my village. Turned out he was married to Qin Wan, old Qin Diyun's daughter. Small world. I smelled the blood all around us and warned we should leave before something else showed up. The brothers looked at the dole carcasses and wanted to take them. They were worth decent money, but they already had a 60-gene roe deer and a wounded brother to carry. They couldn't manage more. I told them to take what they could. We parted ways. They headed home while I climbed a big tree about 300 meters from the dole corpses and waited. I hadn't caught anything all day except those pheasants, and I figured something would come to scavenge. After over an hour, just as I was about to give up, wolf howls echoed through the forest. A pack of gray wolves appeared, 8 or 9 of them. The scrawniest one led the approach, clearly the lowest rank, living on scraps. They circled the dole bodies for 5 or 6 minutes without eating. Then a loud howl rang out, and a massive black wolf appeared behind the pack, bigger than all the others. The alpha. I raised a Type 56, chambered a round, and opened fire at about 300 meters. My trigger finger worked fast. I killed 7 wolves, deliberately sparing the black alpha and the runt. I wanted to track the black one. After reloading and waiting a few minutes, I climbed down and collected 7 wolf carcasses, 60 to 70 gene each, plus the dole bodies. Plenty of dog food for the space. The wolf pelts were prime early winter quality, thick undercoat, glossy fur. At least 10 plus yuan per hide, over 100 for the set. The dole skins were supposedly medicinal and might sell at herb shops. Feiyu was tracking the black wolf from above. I followed the signal. The clever beast ran a wide loop trying to shake any pursuit. Too bad it didn't know its tracker was in the sky. After nearly an hour of running, the black wolf reached a rocky hill, its den. But instead of a warm welcome from its family, it found a lynx attacking its home. Inside was a gray female wolf, its mate, defending 4 half-grown cubs against the predator. Lynxes and wolves are natural enemies. They attack each other's dens and young whenever they can. This lynx had been watching the wolf pack's den for a while, but never dared strike when the full pack was home. Today, with the black alpha leading everyone out to hunt, only the gray mother wolf and 4 half-grown cubs remained. The lynx attacked and managed to wound the mother and 2 cubs. Then the black wolf came racing back alone, furious from losing its entire pack and now finding its home under siege. Its rage sent its fighting power through the roof. The lynx was too fast to catch, but smart enough to know it couldn't beat 2 adult wolves. It bounced off the rocks and disappeared. I was in no rush. I tracked the black wolf slowly, conserving energy. But when I got within 1,000 meters, the black wolf emerged from its den and faced my direction. I'd been careful, yet it detected me anyway. This wolf could pick up scent carried through the air, an upwind nose, the rarest gift in canines. Even in the 1960s, a hunting dog with that talent was priceless. I had to capture it alive. Even if I couldn't tame it, breeding it in my space would increase the odds of producing offspring with the same gift. I raised the Type 56 and fired 2 shots at the ground near its feet. Even a wolf this exceptional flinched and stepped back. 2 more shots drove it into the den. I positioned my space entrance at the den opening, lit several firecrackers, and tossed them inside. The explosions in the tight cave sent all 6 wolves, the black alpha, its gray mate, and 4 cubs, bolting straight into my space. I separated the cubs from their parents immediately. Without the pups nearby, the mother would enter heat faster in the warm space environment. Mission complete. I attached the space to Feiyu and flew home before dark. Inside the space, I skinned all the wolves and doles, then ground the meat and organs with coarse grain into dog food. The next morning, before I could leave for the mountains, someone knocked. 6 young people, the sent-down educated youth. The pimple-faced one, Li Xiang, announced they knew I had a gun and wanted to borrow it. I didn't even know these people, and they had the nerve to ask for my rifle, a Mosin worth over 100 yuan even at its age. Grandfather had used it to fight the Japanese. I refused flatly. Li Xiang started cursing at me. Before he finished his first word, I front-kicked him in the chest. He flew backward into 2 of the others, and all 3 went down in a pile. I asked calmly what he'd been about to say. The pain and the cold ground cleared his head fast. He stammered that it was nothing, called me, Comrade he, and they left. As they walked away, I said loud enough for all of them to hear. Some people just don't know how to talk. A good beating fixes that. Li Xiang clenched his fists but kept walking. I didn't take any of them seriously. I grabbed my gear and headed for Wild Ox Ridge. Yesterday's route had been barren. I let the big white dog out once I was far from the village. It wasn't a scent tracker, but at least it could alert me to danger. Soon I found tracks in the snow, several roe deer, big and small prints mixed together. I called the white dog over and tried to get it to follow the scent. It understood what I wanted but just sniffed around in circles, going nowhere. Not a tracker at all. I was losing faith in the big white dog. If it couldn't even track scent or fight, it was useless, not even worth keeping as a breeding dog. Then an idea hit me. I'd established a mental link with Feiyu and gained her eyesight. What if I connected with the black wolf and gained its sense of smell, or at least its obedience? I entered the space and appeared beside the black wolf. I focused my mental energy into a spiritual brand and pressed it onto the wolf's mind. It resisted and shattered my first attempt. My head spun. I tried again and again until finally the connection locked in. The moment it did, a flood of smells crashed into my nose. Overwhelming, almost knocked me out. I had to use the space to block the sensory overload. But it worked. The black wolf was tamed. I brought it out and pointed at the roe deer tracks in the snow. The wolf lifted its head, sniffing the air, not the ground. A true, upwind nose. No wonder it had detected me from 1,000 meters at its den. I named it Wanli, 10,000 miles, hoping its nose would live up to the name. While we tracked, Feiyu spotted the targets, 5 roe deer. She also found another group of hunters with 6 dogs approaching from a different direction. I was closer, so I pushed hard to get there first. At 300 meters, the deer sensed me and bolted. I raised the Type 56 and fired. Every shot hit. I would have preferred capturing them alive, but with rival hunters nearby, I couldn't risk the time. All 5 went into my space's time-frozen cabin. I put the black wolf away too and continued alone. Those 5 deer were a solid haul. Anything else was a bonus. Less than 3 minutes after I left, the 3 hunters arrived at the kill site. They found blood on the snow, 1 set of human footprints, dog prints that vanished, and no carcasses. After puzzling it out, they decided I must have carried the deer on my shoulders with my dog walking in my footprints behind me. Their leader announced, "Only 1 person. These kills are destined to be ours." If I'd heard that, I would have laughed. They treated robbery like fate. Anything they could take was meant to be theirs, shameless as certain historical warlords. They released their hunting dogs on my trail. Feiyu showed me everything. I wasn't surprised people existed like this in the mountains. The real danger was never the animals, it was always humans. I swapped my Type 56 for an Arasaka rifle from the black market stash. No need to reveal good weapons. I left it unloaded but prepared 2 pistols inside my space. A Type 54 and an M1911. I kept walking casually. The 3 men and their dogs caught up fast. When they saw I was alone, they spread out at 30 meters and pointed their guns at me. "Don't move." I stood still. I wanted to see what they'd try next. 3 men pointed their guns at me. I wasn't afraid of them shooting intentionally. I was afraid of their guns going off by accident. My body was still flesh and blood, no matter how strong I'd gotten. A man with a scar by his eye walked up, grabbed my Arasaka rifle, and said, "Let go." I released it. He admired it and slung his own shotgun behind his back. Then their leader, a man called Chung Dong, demanded to know where the roe deer were. I played dumb, said I hadn't fired my gun all day. Scarface sniffed the barrel and confirmed no gunpowder smell. The Arasaka was unloaded, so naturally it hadn't been fired. They sent a yellow hunting dog to search around me. I knew the dog would pick up my scent and connect me to the kill site. Time to act first. I kicked the dog away, lunged at Chung Dong, and ripped the Type 56 from his hands before he could react. I grabbed his neck with one hand and pointed his own rifle at the short man, Lai San, who was holding a Zhongjing rifle. Lai San didn't try to save his boss. Instead, he sneered and called Chung Dong pathetic. Then he revealed he'd been wanting to kill Chung Dong for a long time, for taking a bigger share and sleeping with his woman. He figured he could shoot through Chung Dong to hit me, then blame everything on the dead stranger. I read the situation instantly. At 10 meters, his Zhongjing could punch through both of us. I fired first, hit Lai San in the chest. As he fell backward, his fingers squeezed the trigger, but I'd already shoved Chung Dong into the bullet's path. The round buried itself in Chung Dong's chest without passing through. Scarface, whose real name was Lai Fuguwei, Lai San's cousin, finally reacted. He worked the bolt on my Arasaka and pulled the trigger. Click. Empty gun. He dropped it and reached for his shotgun on his back. I put a bullet through his head before he touched it. I told his body, "Don't steal someone's gun. It might be empty." As a former mercenary, I'd killed plenty of people. These three were hunters on the surface, but robbers underneath. I felt nothing. Their 6 dogs turned aggressive, so I shot them all. I stripped the 3 bodies, dumped them in a deep ravine, and burned their clothes and anything worthless. The blood would attract scavengers, and the next snowfall would erase every trace. By spring thaw, only bones would remain. If that. The 6 dogs became food for the black wolf Wanli and his family. Afterward, I kept hunting and bagged 3 small boars around 100 gene each. Not great, but the dogs needed feeding. I also made a decision about my dog situation. The females would stay for breeding, plus 4 strong males as hold dogs, big enough to pin prey during hunts. The rest of the males were dead weight. They'd eaten hundreds of yuan worth of food over 2 months of space-time without producing a single scent tracker. Even the breeding results were disappointing. The big white dog had dominated, so most puppies were his mediocre offspring. I'd sell the surplus males to Qianjiu at the black market. Around 3 in the afternoon, the clouds thickened, snow coming again. I headed home. Near the village I landed, pulled a rabbit from my space to carry as proof of my hunt, and walked in casually. A village grandma praised me for catching another rabbit. A sharp-faced woman sneered that a whole gun for just 1 rabbit was pathetic. If her son Maudin had a gun, he'd bring down a huge boar for the whole village. Everyone who heard her just laughed to themselves. This woman was so stingy, she counted individual wild vegetables when splitting a harvest with her sister-in-law. Even if her son killed a boar, she'd hide every scrap. That nosy woman was just jealous that I always came back from the mountains with something while her family ate nothing but potatoes and cabbage. If my catch had been big enough to share, she'd have been first in line demanding a piece. Within an hour of getting home, the second snowfall of the year started, heavy and steady. After this snow, hunting season would really begin. Animals would leave clear tracks in the fresh snow as they searched for food. I went into my space and culled 12 male dogs that had proven worthless. No scent tracking talent. Couldn't even compete for mates against the big white dog. Combined with the 6 dogs from the dead robbers, I had over 700 gene of dog meat. The innards went to the wolves. The next morning, acting brigade leader Chun Lihua showed up with 2 militiamen to check on me. He'd noticed my chimney wasn't smoking. I'd slept in the space and never lit the com. He told me to stop being lazy and clear my roof before it collapsed like Zhang Yudeo's. He was going house to house checking after that disaster. I cleared the snow with my rake tool, swept it into the space, and made a path through the yard. Winter settled in properly after that. Old people and women stayed indoors. Men worked production team jobs, digging stumps, hauling rocks, construction projects. Some found temporary work at the logging camp, pulling timber out of the deep forest. They called it pulling sets, dangerous work requiring strong men and draft animals. People died every year doing it, crushed by logs or attacked by wild animals. Over the next month, several more snowfalls came. I went into the mountains regularly. With Feiyu scouting from above and Wanli the black wolf tracking scent on the ground, my hunting was incredibly productive. I sold everything through Qianjiu at the black market and traded for supplies, cotton, fabric, and other necessities. I paid old Qin's wife and daughters-in-law 2 rabbits to sew me 2 thick cotton quilts and a new padded jacket. The Shi brothers from Big Rock Village visited to thank me properly. Shi Ying and Shi Xiong brought 6 puppies from their hunting dog's litter as a gift. Since I was building my own dog pack, I accepted gladly and gave them rabbits in return. Then explosive news reached the village. A massive brown bear, over 1,000 jin, had appeared in the logging camp's cutting zone. It had injured many people and killed some, though the camp was keeping the death count quiet. It started 10 days earlier when a wild boar charged into a logging area and injured several workers. The camp's security team shot it and noticed claw marks on its body. They thought nothing of it. The next day, more boars appeared with the same claw wounds. The logging supervisor assumed a boar herd was causing problems and sent 2 security squads, 20 men with Type 56 rifles, into the deep mountains. They killed some boars and found the real culprit, a colossal brown bear that had been driving the boars out of the deep forest. A young security guard from the south, seeing a live brown bear for the first time, decided to test its strength. That test cost him his life, and 2 colleagues who died alongside him, swatted dead by the bear. The 3 security guards' deaths weren't discovered until the evening head count. By the time their bodies were found the next day, they were barely recognizable, mauled by the brown bear and wild boars. The logging camp finally announced the bear's presence. The camp posted a bounty: kill the bear, keep the carcass, plus 200 yuan. Hunters from all around rushed in, including amateurs hoping to strike it rich. Over the next few days, no one killed the bear, but 6 or 7 more hunters died along with over a dozen dogs. That's when word spread that this was a 1,000 jin bear king. The camp raised the bounty to 1,000 yuan cash, a new Type 56 rifle, and a permanent job position. When I heard this, my heart raced, not for the rewards, but for the thrill. Every hunter dreams of taking down a great bear. I geared up and headed to the logging camp. The guards stopped me immediately, too young, alone, no hunting dogs. I told them I just wanted to look around and see the action. They made me sign a death waiver. Any injury or death was my own responsibility, all ammunition costs were mine, and no shooting at fellow hunters. The camp had started requiring these after dead hunters' families demanded compensation. I signed without hesitation and walked in. Before entering, I'd studied the camp's map and noted where the bear had been spotted. I sent Feiyu up for aerial scouting and moved toward the target zone. I passed group after group of hunters, all in pairs or teams with dogs. I was the only one alone. Then I spotted a familiar face, Huang Er from my village. He was with 2 others, an older hunter with a worn Arasaka rifle and a young man carrying a makeshift spear. They looked alike, probably father and son. Huang Er's eyes lit up the moment he saw my Mosin Nagant. I could tell he was scheming again. I walked past without acknowledging him. He shouted after me, but I pretended not to hear. The older hunter was Feng Daqing, Huang Er's cousin on his mother's side. A scumbag hunter who broke every rule, killing nursing mothers, wiping out entire dens, whatever it took. He'd come hoping to win the job position for his son Feng Chang. He'd invited Huang Er along as expendable help. A loner nobody would miss if he died. When Feng Daqing saw me alone with a good rifle and heard I had no family, he got the same greedy look as Huang Er. These 2 were cut from the same cloth. Huang Er wanted to trick my gun away from me, and Feng Daqing wanted to take it by force. As I neared the target area, I slowed down. Something was following me. I had Feiyu check. It was Huang Er's group with 4 hunting dogs. One black and yellow dog kept sniffing the ground every few steps, clearly tracking me. I found a massive tree, climbed it in seconds, and slipped into my space. The wind scattered my scent trail. When the tracking dog lost my smell, Feng Daqing cursed it as useless. He'd already counted my rifle as his. From the space, I watched the dog's behavior and confirmed they'd been hunting me, not the bear. I didn't know their exact plan, but it wasn't friendly. I'm no pushover. If they wanted to target me, they'd better be ready for what came back at them. When Huang Er's group was about 200 meters from me, I pulled out an Arasaka rifle from my space, not because it was good, but to hide my identity. Since these 3 had bad intentions, I'd use them as bait for the bear. I prioritized the black and yellow tracking dog, a ground nose tracker that posed the biggest threat to me. 5 quick shots. The tracker went down first. Then I wounded 3 of the other 4 dogs. Only Huang Er's own dog survived. Blood soaked the snow, filling the air with scent. Perfect bait. Feng Chang panicked, thinking I'd found them and was trying to kill them. But Feng Daqing stayed calm. He noted the gunshots came from an Arasaka, not my Mosin Nagant, and assumed a rival hunter had attacked their dogs to slow them down. He told the others that regardless of who did it, they'd pin the blame on me and make me pay for their losses. The black and yellow dog was borrowed. Someone would need to cover that cost, and Feng Daqing had already decided that someone was me. While waiting in my space, I took 5 7.62mm bullets and carved crosses into the tips with a knife. This would increase their damage on impact, but reduce range and wear the barrel. Worth it against 1,000 gene bear. Half an hour passed. Then I heard it. Deep, rumbling bear roars echoing through the forest. The 1,000 gene brown bear had arrived. I stayed hidden. Let it chase off these pests first so I could fight without worrying about someone shooting me in the back. Huang Er's group heard the roars too and tried to flee. They abandoned the 3 wounded dogs and followed their 1 surviving dog back the way they came. But a few hundred meters out, the dog tucked its tail and urinated in terror. Feng Chang spotted it first, a massive dark shape moving toward them about 1,000 meters away. Feng Daqing's original plan had been to send 4 dogs forward to pin the bear while he shot from safety. He'd even planned to sacrifice Huang Er if necessary. But now 3 dogs were gone. The bear was coming, and reality was nothing like his fantasies. He told Huang Er to take his dog forward and block the bear while he aimed from behind. Even Huang Er didn't believe the promise of 1 shot, 1 kill. The surviving dog was barking hysterically at the bear's predator scent, which the bear interpreted as a challenge. It dropped to all 4s and charged, snow flying everywhere. Feng Daqing raised his zhongjing with shaking hands and fired. The bullet went nowhere near the bear. He pulled the trigger again. Click, click. He'd forgotten to work the bolt. His son screamed at him to chamber a round. He managed 1 more wild shot, then shouted, "Run," and bolted without waiting for anyone. Feng Chang followed instantly. Poor Huang Er was left behind, sweating in the freezing cold. The Feng father and son hadn't even called his name. He cursed them and ran in a different direction, splitting off. His double-barrel shotgun was useless against this monster. 50 meters effective range meant getting close enough to die. The bear ignored Huang Er and chased the bigger group, the Feng pair. When Feng Daqing looked back, Huang Er was gone, and the bear was less than 100 meters behind them. Feng Daqing fired wildly and actually hit the bear, but the bullet only enraged it. The bear roared and charged faster. Before Feng Daqing could work the bolt for another shot, a massive paw swatted him through the air like a rag doll. He slammed into a tree and crumpled. Feng Chang looked back and saw the bear less than 10 meters behind him. He screamed and tried to run, but 2 strides later the bear caught him with 1 swipe, snapped his spine, and ripped through his padded jacket. While the bear was deciding which one to eat first, I fired. I'd been waiting for this moment with my cross-carved bullet loaded. The modified 7.62mm round hit the bear's hind leg and tumbled inside, leaving an egg-sized exit wound. The bear howled in agony but couldn't find me. Its instincts told it to flee. It abandoned both bodies and limped toward the deep forest, dragging its injured leg. I switched to a Type 56 for its larger magazine and followed at a comfortable pace, letting Feiyu track from above. The winter trees had dropped their leaves, making aerial tracking easy. The bear left a blood trail in the snow, but I knew the wound might freeze shut eventually. I controlled my weight on the snow, leaving only shallow prints. The wounded bear stumbled along, unsteady on 3 good legs. Meanwhile, a team of 5 experienced hunters led by a man named Wang Tung heard the gunshots and bear roars. Wang Tung had organized this group specifically for the bounty. He wanted the job position, and the other 4 would split the cash and rifle. They had over a dozen dogs between them. They reached the Feng pair's bodies in 20 minutes. Huang Er was hiding nearby. Wang Tung's lead dog found him, and after a warning shot, Huang Er surrendered with his hands up. He lied about holding off the bear himself, but his shaking legs gave him away. He told them the bear had been shot and fled in a certain direction. One hunter examined the blood on the ground and estimated the bear was seriously wounded, probably hit at close range. Wang Tang's team released their dogs and pressed forward in pursuit. I kept pace with the bear for over half an hour until it finally stopped, exhausted. It sat down, licked its wound, then licked snow off the ground, desperate for water after the long run. I pulled out my Mosin Nagant with another cross-carved bullet. The bear faced away from me, head down drinking snow. I couldn't guarantee a kill shot from behind, so I ordered Feiyu to land in a tree above the bear and screech. The bear lifted its head. There it was, the back of its skull, wide as a dinner plate. I squeezed the trigger. The modified bullet drilled into the bear's brain and tumbled, shredding everything inside. The massive body collapsed face first into the snow. I approached quickly. At 10 meters, I pulled the entire 1,000-gene carcass into my space with my mind. Inside the space, I confirmed it was dead, then sliced open its belly and removed the gallbladder. It was the size of a rice bowl, glowing translucent gold in the light. From what I could tell, this was a golden gallbladder, the rarest and most valuable kind. I stored the bear's gallbladder and carcass in the time-frozen cabin, then flew on Feiyu toward the logging camp's outer perimeter. About 10 li out, I landed, cut some branches for camouflage, and dug a snow pit to hide the bear's body. I'd need help getting it back. Carrying a 1,000-gene bear alone would raise too many questions. I cut off the bear's tail as proof. It was nearly 30 centimeters long, unusually big. I couldn't figure out what a bear that size needed such a short tail for. Back at the checkpoint, the guard from that morning laughed when I said I'd killed the bear. He thought I was joking until I showed him the tail, fresh blood, unmistakably bare and oversized. His face changed instantly. He ran off and came back in 10 minutes with a deputy security chief named Su and a squad of over 10 men. After questioning me, Deputy Chief Su ordered a guard named Zhao Dong to take 2 men and a sled pulled by 2 mules to retrieve the carcass. On the way out, I shared cigarettes from a pack of Daikyamen. Zhao Dong took one, but reminded me that smoking was prohibited in the logging zone. And since I'd be working here soon, I should learn the rules. He was right. Killing the bear meant I'd earned the job position from the bounty. After about an hour, we reached my hiding spot. I cleared the branches and revealed the bear in the snow pit. Zhao Dong's jaw dropped. He'd heard about the 1,000-gene bear, but seeing it up close was something else entirely. All 3 guards were stunned. The 4 of us hauled the bear toward the sled with ropes. The mules panicked when they smelled the bear, but a guard calmed them down. We barely managed to load the carcass onto the sled. Only the driver rode. The rest of us walked alongside to keep the weight manageable. Back at the perimeter, Deputy Chief Su had saved us meals. I paid with local grain ration tickets since I didn't have camp meal vouchers. The food was basic, cornmeal buns, radish with wild boar meat, and braised potatoes. While I ate, Su contacted the main camp headquarters. The camp director ordered everything, me and the bear, shipped to headquarters immediately. We loaded the bear onto the logging railway and rode a train straight through without stops. The camp headquarters was practically a small town. Offices, a school, hospital, supply cooperative, even a brick factory. It answered directly to the Provincial Forestry Bureau, not local government. Word spread fast. Leaders, workers, and their families all rushed to see the 1,000-gene bear. Security had to call in extra guards to control the crowd. The bear was displayed in the main square for everyone to gawk at. I was brought to a small conference room to meet Deputy Director Zhou, who handled logistics and personnel. First came the 1,000 yuan cash reward, counted out by the finance chief and signed for. Then the brand new Type 56 semi-automatic rifle. The camp also issued me a firearms permit and, as a bonus, a hunter's license. The hunter's license meant I could legally hunt in the logging camp's cutting zone. Since the camp's authority was higher than the commune's, nobody could report me for hunting anymore. The deputy director and finance chief left, and I sat down with the personnel chief to discuss the job. The camp offered 3 positions: security guard, log stacker, or supply store clerk. All came with formal worker status at 25 yuan per month. I stared at the options and felt nothing but dread. I hated the idea of sitting at a desk doing the same thing every day. I asked the personnel chief quietly if I could sell the position instead. He was baffled. People fought tooth and nail for formal jobs, and here I was trying to get rid of one. He called the camp director, Jiang Feiyue, to report my unusual request. Director Jiang happened to be hosting an important guest, Qi Zhanfei, director of the provincial steel factory. The two were old war buddies from the Korean War, closer than brothers. Qi Zhanfei overheard the phone call and saw an opportunity. He needed to place his nephew in a job but couldn't put him at his own steel factory without it looking bad. If he swapped a steel factory purchasing agent position for my logging camp job, his nephew could go to the camp and I'd get the role I wanted, a purchasing agent who didn't have to sit in an office every day. They brought me to Director Zhang's office. Both directors sized me up and seemed impressed that I wasn't nervous in front of two factory heads. Zhang explained the deal: trade my camp job for a purchasing agent position at the steel factory. I asked the key question: did I just need to meet purchasing quotas without clocking in daily? She confirmed that was correct. If I failed to meet targets, my pay could be docked, but otherwise my time was my own. I agreed immediately and signed the transfer papers. Then she asked about the bear. I played along and said I hadn't decided what to do with it. He offered to buy the carcass as my first purchasing delivery to the steel factory at 1.2 yuan per gene and suggested I ride back with him to complete my onboarding paperwork. Director Jiang protested. He'd wanted some bear meat for the camp. She promised to save the bear paws for a special dinner when Jiang visited. By the time we reached the square, the camp's cook had already skinned the bear. I kept the pelt and sold the rest, meat, organs, everything, to the steel factory for 500 yuan. There wasn't room on the transport for me today, so Chi told me to report to the steel factory within 7 days and gave me a letter of introduction. I walked out of the camp headquarters carrying the bear skin in a sack and 2 rifles. This trip had been incredibly profitable: 1,500 yuan in cash, bonus ration tickets from Director Jiang, a brand new registered Type 56 rifle with a legal firearms permit, a hunter's license, and a purchasing agent job that gave me freedom to hunt whenever I wanted. Once I found a deserted spot, I dumped everything into my space, climbed aboard Feiyu, and flew home. Why walk for hours when you can fly? I got home quickly. Nobody in the village except Huang Er knew I'd gone to the logging camp, and nobody knew I'd completed the bounty. Huang Er had spent the whole day following Wang Teng's group without finding the bear. When he returned to the camp perimeter that evening, he learned a young man surnamed he had killed it and hauled it back by early afternoon. All hunters were told not to come back. The job was done. His cousin Feng Daqing and Feng Chang had died from their injuries in the cutting zone. Because of the death waiver, nobody owed their families anything. Huang Er immediately guessed it was me. Hearing I'd claimed the bounty hurt him worse than losing his cousin. He'd never liked Feng Daqing anyway. The man had spent years mocking him for being a lifelong bachelor. Huang Er hatched a scheme. Feng Daqing's widow was known as a difficult woman. He'd stir her up to harass me, then swoop an offering to solve my problem in exchange for my new Type 56 rifle. With better weapons, he fantasized, he could hunt anything. He walked all night to Feng Daqing's house, arriving around 10. Outside the door, he heard unmistakable sounds. His supposedly grieving sister-in-law was with a man. Feng Daqing wasn't even cold yet. Huang Er saw an opportunity. Catch her in the act, hold it over her, and take her share of the family property too. His brain overheating with greed, he kicked the door open. His sister-in-law screamed at him. He pointed his shotgun at the man and ordered him out. The man dressed silently and left. Huang Er started threatening her. Keep quiet and do what I say, or I'll tell everyone. He was still scheming about extorting me when an arm wrapped around his neck from behind. The man hadn't actually left. A voice growled that Huang Er had seen something he shouldn't have. The arm squeezed tighter. Huang Er, choking, managed to flip his double barrel under his armpit and fire blindly backward. At point-blank range, the shotgun blast tore the man's chest apart. He collapsed, dying. The sister-in-law went berserk. She charged Huang Er naked and slapped him across the face. Huang Er was still in kill mode. She screamed at him to shoot her if he was a real man. The same taunting that had always worked on the old Huang Er. But tonight's Huang Er had already killed once. He pressed the barrel against her chest and pulled the trigger. The steel pellets destroyed her insides. 2 gunshots woke the village. Huang Er panicked and ran. He almost made it out before militia caught him. They ordered him to stop and turn around. Flashlights revealed blood on his chest. He instinctively raised his shotgun, not to fight, but out of reflex. The militia didn't wait to find out. They opened fire. Multiple bullets tore through him. He died without saying a word. The militia pieced together a theory. The dead man, Feng Dahu, had been having an affair with Feng Daqing's wife. Huang Er, identified as Feng Daqing's relative, must have caught them, killed Feng Dahu to silence him, then killed the wife. The militia wanted to go back to sleep, so everyone agreed on this version and called it closed. Poor Huang Er. He never got the meat, the gun, or the money, and he died wearing someone else's crime on his record. I knew nothing about any of this. I'd eaten dinner, lit the Kong fire, gone into my space, and slept deeply. The next morning I noticed something curious. The accelerated time flow inside the space didn't seem to affect my body. I aged at normal speed regardless of how long I spent inside. Discovering that the space's accelerated time didn't affect my aging was wonderful news. No more worrying about losing years of my life while training inside. That morning I fully disassembled grandfather's Mosin-Nagant, cleaned and oiled every part including the barrel, reassembled it, and stored it in a wooden box. This rifle was now a keepsake. I had a legal new Type 56 plus plenty of weapons in my space. No need to use grandfather's gun anymore. I took apart the new Type 56 to familiarize myself with it, then headed into the mountains to test fire it. I also maintained my Type 54 pistol and M1911, hidden weapons that could save my life someday. On the way out, villagers noticed my new rifle. Someone pointed out it wasn't my old Mosin-Nagant, but a Type 56, the same type that went missing when Li Chenglu was arrested. Suspicion spread fast. Everyone knew my family was poor, so buying one seemed impossible. One villager ran off to report me to the new brigade leader Chen Lihua, hoping for a reward. I didn't know about any of that. I'd found deer tracks in the snow and sent Fei Yu to scout ahead. She found a herd of wild Sika deer. My breathing quickened. Sika deer are valuable head to tail. Deer blood is prized as a tonic for men. The herd was 5 or 6 li away. I wanted them alive, not dead. What I really needed was a proper dog pack to drive them into a trap. I didn't have trained dogs, but I did have Wanli's wolf family. I released the mother wolf and 4 wolf sons. After months in the warm space, they'd grown into full adults, each over 100 gene, large even for Asian gray wolves. But they'd never fought or hunted in the wild. The wolves shivered the moment they hit the freezing air. They'd been living at 20-something degrees and had thin coats. Not ideal, but they'd have to manage. It took me about an hour to reach the deer, going slow so the wolves could adjust. The herd was grazing on a slope where the snow was thinnest, scraping down to dried grass. A magnificent bull stood watch at the top, fat even in winter, with antlers branching 7 or 8 times. I crept to 400 meters, then broke into a sprint across the snow. The bull spotted me and bugled a warning to the herd. As it turned to run, I shot it in the hind leg. The bullet hit perfectly. The bull lost balance mid-leap and tumbled down the slope. The panicked herd bolted down the ravine. I'd already sent Wanli and his wolves to block the other end, 2 kilometers away. Without their leader, the deer ran straight into the wolf line, panicked, and turned back, right toward me, where I was ready and waiting. From the high ground above the ravine, I watched the deer running back toward me after Wanli's wolves scared them. I aimed low, at their legs, and emptied 10 rounds. I wanted them alive. I reloaded and climbed down into the ravine. The big bull had tumbled down the slope and broken 1 antler. I collected him into my space along with the broken antler. Further along, I found 2 wounded does, each around 150 or 160 gene, with 2 fawns of a few dozen gene each. All went into the space for treatment later. I walked toward Wanli's position and found a small fawn of 40 or 50 gene being herded back by the wolves. It charged straight at me and headbutted my chest. I barely felt it. Into the space it went. Inside the space, I removed all the bullets from the wounded deer's legs, sawed off the bull's remaining antler so new velvet would grow, and gave them spring water from the space to speed healing. The herd was 1 bull, 2 does, and 3 fawns, one of which was a young male whose antlers hadn't grown in yet. I'd only come out to test my new rifle and ended up capturing an entire Sika deer herd. Deer are far more valuable than wild boar. They produce wealth continuously through velvet and blood. Any other hunter finding this herd would have killed them all and carried out whatever they could. My space made the impossible easy. I put the wolves away and just wandered, picking mushrooms off trees as I went. Then a massive lone boar, over 500 gene, burst out of nowhere and charged me. Even tigers avoid boars this big. This one had a grudge. Yesterday hunters had killed and scattered his entire harem. Seeing my gun, he mistook me for one of them. I saw breeding potential, not dinner. Cross-breeding this giant with my domestic pigs could produce oversized offspring. If castrated young, they'd taste as good as regular pork, but grow much bigger. I scrambled up a tree. The stubborn beast rammed the trunk repeatedly. Killing it would have been easy, 2 headshots. Instead, I waited for it to back up for another charge and shot its front hoof. It squealed and tried to run. I put 2 more rounds into its hind legs. It collapsed, sitting on the ground, screaming but unable to support its massive body. I jumped down, touched a staff to its head, and pulled it into my space. All 3 bullets were still lodged in its legs. The beast's defenses were incredible. I extracted them with my mind, which made the boar scream again, then locked it up alone. Whether it walked with a limp didn't matter. I only needed its breeding ability to work. I headed home, not knowing that trouble was waiting. A villager had reported my new Type 56 to Brigade Leader Chinlihua. Rumors had spread all day that I'd stolen the village's missing rifle, the one Li Chenglu was executed over. Li family members were saying Li Chenglu had been wrongly killed, and I should have been shot instead. By the time I got back, dozens of people were gathered at my gate. Chinlihua, a squad of militia, and a crowd of spectators. As I walked home carrying a rabbit and my new Type 56 on my back, I saw a crowd around my gate. Before I could say anything, Li Shuexiang pointed a single-barrel shotgun at me and screamed that I'd stolen the village's rifle and gotten his father killed. I didn't let him finish. I tossed the rabbit to Qin Ming, grabbed the shotgun barrel with my left hand, and slapped Li Shuexiang across the face with my right. 6 or 7 hard smacks before an old man shouted for me to stop. I kicked Li Shuexiang away and kept his gun. The safety was off. He'd actually been ready to shoot me. I pointed the shotgun toward the ground near the Li family members. An old Li clan elder told me to put the gun down and talk. I asked where all this talking was when someone pointed a loaded weapon at my face. Chinlihua stepped forward and explained. The village heard I was carrying a Type 56, and since one went missing, they came to check. I asked him if he remembered the missing rifle's condition. He said it was 5 or 6 out of 10. He'd picked it up from the Armed Forces Department himself. I handed him my rifle. One look and he knew. Mine was brand new, not the missing one. He confirmed it publicly. Li Shuexiang demanded I explain where I got it. I told him I didn't owe him any explanations. I told Chinlihua I had documentation inside and walked toward my house. When spectators tried to follow me in, I warned them to stay out. One person started accusing me of hiding something. I fired the shotgun into the ground at his feet. His face went white. Then I gripped the shotgun barrel with both hands and bent it into a bow shape. The crowd watched steel deform in my bare hands. Cold sweat appeared on many faces. Inside, I swapped rifles in my space and grabbed my certificates. The bear bounty completion papers, the hunter's license, the firearms permit. I called Chinlihua into the yard and handed him everything. His eyes went wide reading through them. A teenager had killed the 1,000-gene bear and claimed all those rewards. Then he got awkward. He asked if I really had that much money, and could I maybe. I cut him off before he finished. No, he tried explaining. Winter was here, the village didn't have enough grain, and the money Li Chenglu and Zhang Li had stolen was seized by the commune for ongoing investigations. Someone above was eyeing that money. He wanted me to buy grain for the poorest families. I refused. My money split among the whole village would barely give each person 1 yuan, meaningless. He should find another way. He tried another angle. Could I lead hunting parties into the mountains? The production team would credit me work points, and the game could feed struggling families. I refused that too. I was too young for anyone to take orders from, and I'd never trust random villagers at my back in the mountains. Chinlihua grew up here. He knew the rule. In the deep forest, if you can't trust the person behind you, you might as well dig your own grave. People have killed hunting partners for far less than 1,000-gene bear bounty. I didn't care whether the villagers lived or died. I'd look after the few who'd been good to me. Everyone else could either treat me like a neighbor or get lost. I had no sentimental attachment to this village. I was a transmigrator. If things got bad enough, I'd just move. I asked Chinlihua privately who'd started today's rumor. He asked me to let it go as a favor to him. I agreed. but warned that if anyone ran their mouth about me again, I wouldn't be so forgiving. I released my killing intent, the kind you only get from actually taking lives. Chun Lihua was a veteran who'd been to war. He felt it immediately and was visibly shaken. He couldn't figure out where a teenager got that kind of aura. He told the villagers my rifle was legal and sent everyone home. I gave the rabbit to Qin Meng as a gift. He hadn't eaten meat in a while and gratefully accepted. That night, Chun Lihua's wife told him bluntly that I was right to refuse helping the village. When grandfather was alive, he'd helped everyone. But when he died, hardly anyone came to pay respects. Did they really think I'd forget that? I spent my time in the space wrestling with elm planks. I needed a cart for the trip to the steel factory. I had the perfect animal. The blue mule born in my space had grown tall, over 170 centimeters at the shoulder, with plenty of strength. Building the cart was another story. The original boy had helped grandfather with carpentry, so I had the memories, but my hands didn't cooperate. I ruined so much wood before finally producing a workable flatbed cart with slots for side panels so it could haul cargo or carry passengers. The wasted lumber at least made good firewood. The critical problem was wheels. Rubber tires were nearly impossible to buy in this planned economy. Then I remembered the village warehouse had a broken cart with wooden wheels. I visited Chun Lihua the next morning and bought both wheels for 3 yuan. I fitted them onto an oak axle and hitched up the blue mule. After some initial fussing, it adapted quickly. I rested one more day, then set out early for the steel factory. I flew on Feiyu to scout the location first. It was massive, tens of thousands of workers, practically a small city with all its supporting facilities. I landed in wasteland outside the factory, brought out the mule and cart, then loaded 2 black pigs onto the flatbed, each over 200 jin, bred from the Zhu family ditch stock. Even with unlimited food in my space, these native Chinese pigs had taken a full year to reach this size. That's exactly why I wanted to crossbreed with the giant wild boar. I tied the pigs down and covered them with a straw mat to avoid drawing too much attention. The wooden wheels creaked and groaned the whole way. I passed rows of workers housing while old folks, young women, and children all stared at the unfamiliar young man with the squeaky mule cart. At the factory gate, 4 armed guards stopped me. I handed out cigarettes and showed them Director Chi's letter of introduction. The squad leader verified it was genuine, signed by their director personally. He glanced at the wiggling straw mat, so I uncovered the 2 fat black pigs and explained they were my first procurement delivery. They checked the cart briefly and waved me through. I gave the gate squad leader a pack of Dakium and cigarettes and asked where I should go first. He offered to guide me. The factory complex was huge and easy to get lost in. His name was Lu Feng. He hopped on my mule cart and directed me toward the personnel office. Along the way, we passed the transport department. I spotted car parts everywhere, including rubber tires. My eyes lit up. If I could get those on my cart, the mule could drop dead before the wheels gave out. I made a mental note to mention it to Director Chi. Lu Feng left me at a 3-story office building. I went upstairs to personnel, knocked, and met a woman in her 30s named Su Ying. She looked over my paperwork and did a double take. I was the one who'd killed the 1,000-gene bear? She couldn't connect my young face with that story. Apparently, the bear meat had already made it to the factory kitchen, and my name was circulating as a minor celebrity. She filled out my enrollment form and walked me to the personnel chief's office. Chief Jean, we already knew I was coming. He called someone, then took me upstairs to meet the procurement department head, Chung Dalei, who assigned me to Procurement Section 2 under Section Chief Du Bing. Section 2 handled unplanned purchases, entirely performance-based. Since the bear counted as my first delivery, I started as a full employee at administrative grade 30, 23 yuan per month plus benefits. The catch was a weekly minimum of 30 yuan worth of goods. Fall short too many times, and I'd get demoted. I told Du Bing I'd brought 2 live pigs. He couldn't believe it until we went downstairs and found 30 or 40 people already crowded around my cart, staring at the pigs under the straw mat. A pot-bellied man from Section 1, named Hu Shui, cracked jokes about whether such a young kid really killed the bear. Du Bing told me privately to stay away from this guy. He talked too much. Du Bing took me to the warehouse. The 2 black pigs weighed a combined 473 jin at 80 cents per jin, 378.4 yuan total. The warehouse issued receiving documents. I took the receipt to finance and collected 378.4 yuan in cash. That completed my first full procurement cycle. At the logistics office, I picked up my work uniform and tools. They offered me a bicycle, but I declined. Instead, I requested 2 car tires. After some calls, transport gave me a pair, slightly worn for a truck, but top-grade luxury for a mule cart. Finally, I went to the security office for my field weapon. Since the roads weren't safe, all procurement agents carried guns on assignment. Deputy Chief Chi of the security department took me to the armory. When the doors opened, I saw everything from mortars and heavy machine guns down to pistols of every type. I picked a domestically made Type 54 pistol as my sidearm, powerful and easy to find ammunition for. Deputy Chief Chi Yuan took me to the security department's range with 30 rounds. He explained the basics, then told me to shoot at a target 10 meters away. I didn't bother aiming carefully. I fired all 8 rounds in under 3 seconds. Chi Yuan shouted at me for wasting bullets without aiming, then walked to the target. Every shot had hit dead center. He came back impressed and asked if I'd used guns before. I said I'd shot rifles, but this was my first pistol. Same principle, point and shoot. Then he slapped his forehead, remembering I was the bear killer. We shot at 20 and 30 meters until all 30 rounds were gone. Every bullet hit the target. At pistol range, you don't need perfect accuracy, just hit first so the other guy doesn't hit you. Back at the armory, I picked out a new Type 54 with 2 magazines and 50 rounds. Chi Yuan registered the serial number on my firearms permit. If this gun hurt or killed anyone, I'd be the one answering for it. I had lunch at the security department's small canteen. They had their own kitchen because of irregular hours. I paid with local grain ration tickets and made friendly faces with enough security staff that I wouldn't get hassled coming and going. My 2 pigs covered a full month's procurement quota, so I didn't need to come back for a while. I loaded the 2 car tires onto my cart and headed out. At the gate, guards questioned the tires until I showed them the logistics department's receipt. Once outside the factory, I found a quiet spot, entered my space, and flew on Feiyu toward Red Flag Commune. No way was I driving a mule cart dozens of li in winter when I could fly. At the commune supply cooperative, I bought soy sauce, vinegar, salt, and other household basics. The clerk asked why I was buying so much. I said I was picking up for neighbors. Mountain people often buy in bulk since they don't come to town often. I asked about cooking spices like star anise, but they didn't carry any. In an era when people couldn't eat their fill, nobody cared about flavor. I drove out of the commune and stashed the fragile items in my space. Then I deliberately placed some bags on the cart, 20 jin of white flour, 20 jin of rice, 30 jin of cornmeal, and some sweet potatoes and potatoes. These were for show, so villagers would see me bringing home supplies through normal means. When I reached the village, women and idle men stared at my cart with greedy eyes. A few women moved closer until my cold stare stopped them dead. They remembered my temper and the whip in my hand. At home, I carried everything inside, then swept it all into my space. People knew I'd bought things, but had no idea what. Village loafers started gossiping about the big blue mule. It wasn't from the village, so maybe I'd stolen it. I'd anticipated this. At the steel factory, I'd registered the mule under the factory's name. On paper, it belonged to the state enterprise. In practice, only I used it. I took the mule to the village blacksmith shop to get it shod. The shop was really just a small workshop run by old men who repaired farm tools and made horseshoes. They gathered there in winter because the forge kept the place warm. I called out to old Song, the village blacksmith. Song Kai was over 60 but still strong and healthy. He recognized me from when the original boy used to visit with grandfather. He admired the blue mule immediately, good eye for livestock after decades in the countryside. I told him I needed horseshoes fitted. He checked the hooves and said they were too big for any shoes he had in stock. He'd have to fire up the forge and make custom ones. His wife and grandson Song Liang came out from the back room. Song Liang was a towering young man, 195 centimeters, built like a wall. Hard to believe anyone could grow that big in an era when most people went hungry. He grabbed the bellows and pumped so hard the forge roared to life in seconds. Old Song said 4 shoes would take about 2 hours and quoted me 2 yuan. I reached for the money, but he stopped me. Could I pay in grain instead? He glanced at his enormous grandson. I understood. That body needed fuel. I offered 10 jin of corn on the cob. He'd have to shell and grind it himself. He agreed. I also asked him to forge a kitchen knife, a boning knife, and a cleaver. He said he could manage the kitchen knife, but lacked quality iron for the other two. They wouldn't hold up. I'd bring good steel another time. I offered 10 more jean of corn for the kitchen knife, left the mule tied at his door, and told him to have Song Liang deliver it when finished. I'd give the corn directly to the boy. Back home, I stared at my pathetic yard fence, packed earth on the bottom, wooden slats on top with gaps wide enough for anyone to see through. Zero privacy. Come spring, I'd rebuild both the house and the walls. I had too many secrets. I took the cart into my space and got to work replacing the wooden wheels with the car tires. After several attempts, I fitted them onto a straight oak axle. The upgrade was massive. The old wooden wheels could barely handle a few hundred jean without threatening to fall apart. These rubber tires could carry as much as the mule and cart frame could handle. Just as I was admiring my work, Chun Lihua's voice came from outside. I opened the door, already knowing what he wanted. Sure enough, he'd heard about the mule and wanted to assign it to the production team so villagers could use it for hauling timber at the logging camp. I cut him off before he finished. The mule wasn't mine. It was registered to the steel factory for my use as a procurement agent. I showed him the paperwork and my employee ID. He verified it was legitimate. I told him coldly to stop trying to squeeze things out of me. I couldn't support the entire village. Then he tried a different approach. Could I purchase the village's mountain goods as part of my procurement work? Normally, villagers had to haul everything to the commune's state purchasing station, where they got terrible prices but had no choice. I thought about it and agreed. I'd buy mountain goods at prices no lower than the state stations. But I made one thing absolutely clear up front. I'd inspect everything before buying. I knew these villagers too well. Without that rule, some would mix dirt and sand into their goods and try to pass it off. If anyone tried cheating me, I wouldn't just refuse. I'd cut them off entirely. I didn't really want this job, but living in the village meant certain obligations were hard to escape. Chun Lihua left to spread the word about my mountain goods purchasing. The collection point would be the brigade headquarters yard, big enough for the job, and I didn't want crowds at my house. Too many people meant too many chances for someone to pocket my belongings. Around 6 that evening, Song Liang delivered the mule with its new shoes fitted. He said the kitchen knife would be ready tomorrow. I offered him to come inside for the corn, but he said his grandfather was waiting for dinner. I grabbed the 20 jean of unshelled corn I prepared and handed it over. The kid seemed a bit simple but honest, the kind who works hard without any tricks. It was nearly December. Nighttime temperatures hit -20. I put the mule in my space so it wouldn't freeze, lit the Kong, and went to sleep inside the space. That night, a massive blizzard tore through the village, howling winds and heavy snow that scared villagers awake. In 1 hour, over 10 centimeters fell. When I came out of the space the next morning, the yard had 60+ centimeters of snow and the roof was buried. The snow was still falling. I fired up the Kong, cleared the roof, and gave up on the yard, pointless while it was still coming down. Sitting on the warm Kong, I wished I had a copper hot pot. All I had was a blackened iron wok. Instead, I decided to make dumplings and steamed buns. I mixed dough with warm water and old starter yeast in my space. While the bun dough rose, I chopped over 10 jean of space-raised pork into filling by hand, no meat grinder, and mixed it with cabbage hearts. The leftover cabbage leaves went to the blue mule. My dumplings started ugly but improved fast. I dipped each finished one in cold water and tossed them outside to freeze instantly in the extreme cold. The ice shell acted as a natural wrapper. I stored the frozen dumplings in the space cabin for whenever I wanted a quick meal. The buns came out well too. I ate the ugly early ones and saved the rest in cloth bags inside the space. That night, I was jolted awake by scratching on my door, claws on wood. I grabbed my Type 56, chambered around, and threw the door open. A dark shape lunged at me. No time to shoot. I kicked it away, then fired. It yelped and went down. My flashlight revealed a wolf. I swept the yard with the light and caught 2 green eyes glowing in the dark. One shot dropped the second wolf. I found a small string of firecrackers, lit them, and tossed them into the yard. The crackling echoed across the village, the traditional signal that wild animals had entered the settlement. Older villagers recognized the warning immediately. Chun Lihua grabbed the brass gong and started hammering it. The urgent clanging told everyone something serious was happening. Militia members dressed, grabbed weapons, and assembled at the brigade headquarters. Once gathered, they figured out the firecrackers had come from my direction. Someone confirmed hearing gunshots too. Real predators had come down from the mountains. Li Shuexiang jumped up and sneered. Yuntian has a gun. Let him deal with it himself. Why wake everyone up? Li Shuexiang had been drinking with his cousin Li Shuedong that evening, complaining about how their Li family had fallen since his father's execution while I kept thriving. When the firecrackers woke everyone, hearing it was me who raised the alarm pushed him over the edge. While the militia argued about what to do, pig squeals erupted from the village pigsty. Chun Lihua split his 30-odd militia into 3 squads, one to the pig pen, one to the cattle shed, one to wake up armed households. The wolves were hitting 2 targets at once, like a real military operation. Chun Lihua's squad found 7 or 8 wolves tearing through the pig pen. These pigs were around 100 gene each, almost big enough to meet the state quota. If they grew a little more by year's end, the village could fulfill its obligation and split the leftover pork. These wolves were literally eating the whole village's meat supply. Chun Lihua told his men to shoot the wolves without hitting the pigs. Nobody dared fire. Most carried shotguns and homemade pipe guns that sprayed everywhere. He changed the order to, try not to hit the pigs. They opened up. Wolves dropped, but some pigs got hit too. The surviving wolves fled into the darkness. 2 dead wolves and 1 badly wounded one were found in the pen. Then gunfire erupted from the cattle shed direction. The wolves had attacked there too. I heard all the shooting, but stayed out of the village. In the dark, a stray bullet could find me and nobody would even know. I collected my 2 wolf kills into the space and set up on the path to the back mountain, hoping to pick off more wolves retreating uphill. Then I spotted a dark figure creep to a position near my front door and lie down, aiming at my doorway. Someone was setting up to ambush me. They'd figured I'd come out through my front door and planned to shoot me into chaos. I circled behind the figure silently and knocked him unconscious. My flashlight revealed Li Shuexiang's face, reeking of alcohol. A plan formed instantly. I pulled a bottle of Beidakang from my space, 65 proof liquor, enough to kill if you drank the whole thing. I grabbed his neck, jammed the bottle neck into his mouth, and poured the entire bottle down his throat. In these temperatures, between the alcohol and the cold, surviving until morning would be a miracle. For insurance, I butchered the 2 wolves from my space and poured their fresh blood on Li Shuexiang's crotch. Wolves following the scent would find him. I dragged him and his shotgun to the mountain trail entrance and left him there. I went back to my yard and fired a few symbolic shots at passing wolf shadows to prove I participated. Then I waited for dawn. In the morning I checked outside. Blood trails showed my late-night shots had wounded some wolves, though no bodies remained. Chun Lihua arrived with militia and asked about my results. I gave a vague answer. Probably hit some, hard to tell in the dark. He updated me on the damage. The large livestock survived, but the pigs took heavy losses. 3 killed outright, 5 more wounded. Those pigs had been on track to reach the 120 gene state quota weight within 2 months. Now that target looked impossible. I saw how worried he was and suggested he report to the commune immediately. Wild animal attacks weren't the village's fault. If he waited until year-end and couldn't meet the quota, that would be truly embarrassing. He should document everything, the dead pigs, the wounded ones, the wolf carcasses, and have it ready for inspection. He asked uncertainly if that would really work. I told him of course it would. Just take care of the injured pigs, treat their wounds properly, and prepare the evidence before the commune sent people to verify. Chun Lihua took my advice and rode to the commune immediately. They sent 2 people to investigate, confirmed the wolf attack, and approved the situation. The 3 dead pigs were butchered into stew and distributed to every household. I didn't bother collecting my share. Less than 2 liang per person after the cadres and commune officials took their cuts. Not worth my time when I had plenty of meat in my space. During the meal, Chun Lihua announced I'd be purchasing mountain goods from villagers. Then Li Shuexiang's mother, Wang Guixiang, showed up panicking. Her son hadn't come home since last night. She'd assumed he was sleeping off his drinking somewhere, but a full day had passed with no sign of him. Chun Lihua organized a search inside the village. Nothing. The conclusion was obvious. Wolves had gotten him. When Chun Lihua suggested the militia search the mountains, everyone refused flat out. Going into those woods in winter was suicide for people who normally stayed near the village. So Chun Lihua came to my door alone and asked me to go search by myself. I stared at him and said, You want me to go alone into a wolf-infested mountain to find someone from the Li family? A family that hates me? Find someone else. I shut the door. He couldn't let it go. The next day, the snow stopped, but the cold was brutal. Chun Lihua forced together 20 militia plus some Li family men and went searching. Everyone knew that after 2 days, the chances were basically zero. After about an hour, they found a scrap of cloth on a bush. A few hours later, they found his shotgun and what looked like human bone fragments. That was all that remained of Li Shuexiang. The wolves had eaten everything else. When Wang Guixiang heard, she fainted. A Li family elder tried to comfort her, saying her other son Li Shuefei was in the army and would make something of himself. What nobody knew yet was that Li Shuefei was already under military investigation because of his father's weapons trafficking and corruption. He'd also been caught trying to bribe his regimental commander. The army would discharge him. Li Shuexiang died outside the village, which by local custom meant no proper funeral. He had no sons. They set up a simple spirit tent outside the village with an empty coffin burial, and that was it. The morning after the burial, I geared up and headed into the mountains. Not for revenge. I didn't care about Li Shuexiang. But animals that have tasted human flesh remember the flavor and pass that memory to their offspring through instinct. This wolf pack had to be eliminated. I released Fei Yu and Wanli once I was deep enough. Fei Yu found the pack within half an hour, several dozen li away. I entered my space and flew on Fei Yu to close the distance. Walking would take too long, and the wolves might move. I positioned myself downwind where they couldn't smell me. The terrain was complex with too many places for an ambush, so I decided to lure them out instead. I took a small wild boar from my space, broke all 4 of its legs, cut a wound on its neck without hitting the artery, and tossed it out screaming in pain. The bleeding, squealing pig got the wolves' attention almost immediately. I climbed a big tree downwind and waited with my rifle ready.